You are now listening to the Sae Bae Cast, the #1 old school RuneScape podcast featuring guests from all across Galanor. To support this podcast, visit the Patreon link in the description.
All right, welcome to the Sae Bae Cast number 120 with mods Ayiza and Sween. How are you guys both doing today?
Yeah, pretty good, thank you. Glad to be here once again. It's been a while since the last episode. What was it, like 50 something that I was on?
Yeah. It's been
a long time.
It's been,
but yeah, overall pretty good.
Year and a half, I think, for both of you almost. Well, over a year and a half for you, Sween.
Is it really?
Yeah, I believe so. I
Been
think
that long?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Time flies. Time literally flies.
As the host, I have to ask, how are you doing? Because I find no one asks that very often when I'm hosting the streams.
I'm great, honestly. I went for a little walk today. I was just telling you guys I finally completed the 8-man TOA. I got hard carried, so that was nice.
I was about to call you a gamer, but I mean, do I have to retract that now?
Oh no, I was absolutely not gaming. I was doing my ZCB specs with like full Torva on. It was bad. It was atrocious, but you know, I had some absolute sweaty gamers out there just pulling me through. So
I can't play him. Anyway, I'll let Sween speak now.
Yeah. Sween, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. I've had a nice day. The weather is lovely. I did the same just before this. Went for a nice little walk in the sun.
Very nice.
Work was good. I got tomorrow off work mostly. A couple of meetings I'm gonna log on for, but tomorrow I will be playing a ton of Diablo, I think.
So let me add, I am actually curious on Diablo because I've never played Diablos, but everyone's playing it right now. But first I want to ask, do you guys work in the office now, or do you guys still do at-home stuff a lot?
I go in maybe 2 or 3 times a week ordinarily. I live really close by. That makes it easy. Jagex as a studio is it's pretty much optional. You can do what you like. Most people do work from home. I'd say like 99% of the time. So when we are in the office, there's only a handful of us, which is a big change from how it used to be on the old school team, like 6 years ago or whatever. But it has its pros and cons. I quite like being able to just crawl to my desk in the morning at home sometimes, but I also like to go into the studio, have a bit of a social flavor, and it's cool seeing all the the artwork and stuff. It gets you in the mood.
Oh yeah, I definitely know that. Okay, I have to say this because I'm going to be a bad host if I don't. It's still a bit scratchy, Sween. I'm sorry to say. I think you need to maybe back up from the mic a little bit. I obviously can't see your setup, but it's a bit scratchy still.
Yeah, Sween likes to eat the microphone just to keep it from eating during the day.
How's it now?
It sounds a little bit better. It sounded great, right as we were doing those ending tests right before the recording, but then it got all scratchy again.
Well, while he manages his microphone, I'll carry on with the answering. Okay. And I work from home, and for the most part, there'll be the occasional time I'll go into the office, but it's mostly for an event if I'm hosting the stream, or if there's a lot of other people from the team that are going in. We have. I think it's every quarter now. We all get together into the office to meet up, go over a bunch of larger meetings that we have, see what's going on for the next few months ahead and stuff. And that's been really nice. That's happened twice now, I think it is, since I rejoined. But I was rehired during the midst of COVID, so working in the office just wasn't simply an option, which was great for me because it was the enabler for me to actually working back at Jagex. So I've really appreciated having that flexibility from Jagex to just be able to continue working from home because I haven't moved any closer to Cambridge from when I was last on the podcast, in fact, and even when I last left Jagex. So that's been great for me. But I do really miss being in the office environment. Working from home definitely has its perks. I finish work instantly and then I get to just close all the work stuff down and start playing games. But it's definitely very isolating, right? You don't get that same interaction that you would if you were with people. So.
Mm-hmm. And you guys have both left Jagex for a little stint of time, and now you're both back. So we will definitely be covering, what your guys' thought process was on leaving. I think we already got both of you are sort of, but now that you're both back and we're both here, I guess we might as well talk about it.
We can see if it's any different.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's the real thing. Are you having those second thoughts again of leaving again because you didn't think it was? But first, yeah. So how was Diablo 4? Because it seems like half of the RuneScape streamers that I watch are streaming Diablo 4. Are you guys enjoying it?
Diablo is awesome. I'm hooked. I played a bit of Immortal, which was the very controversial mobile game, and I enjoyed that like a big consumer whale. So Diablo 4 in comparison to that is even better. I'm loving it.
Hell yeah. Ayiza?
Yeah. Likewise, I've been blasting. I haven't had a huge amount of time to play, although I've definitely made sacrifices in order to play more than I should have. But so far, yeah, absolutely loving it. The campaign is incredible. It's got such a good story. Gameplay is great, and I haven't really encountered any major issues either, which has been nice. Yeah, I'm currently just in the process of grinding through World Tier 4 now, so I'm just gearing up, getting ready to go through Nightmare Dungeons, which is like a progression system that they have in the game. It's like you do a dungeon, you then unlock a higher level dungeon, and you keep going up the tiers to see how far you can get.
So you guys aren't game devs necessarily, but I'm assuming you guys get some sort of inspiration from Diablo 4, things that could be, I guess, introduced or just implemented into OSRS, some of the mechanics or whatever, some of the things they do. Are there any things that you guys have noticed that you would like to see in Old School from Diablo?
I've seen a few boss fights in Diablo which feel very, very similar to boss fights that already exist in Old School, including like flying vampires, which seems mechanically almost the same as like grotesque guardians. I was like, I'm noticing similarities that way. But then again, a lot of MMO mechanics and bosses are just recycled between game to game anyway. So you'll take inspiration when any MMO drops like a dungeon or a raid, whether it's Final Fantasy or Diablo or WoW or whatever. Not that Diablo is an MMO, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but like as a whole, that not just ourselves, but the team, we all take inspiration from different games. We're encouraged to play different games and try them out, to experience them and see what things other studios may be doing that we could look to incorporate or get inspiration from. I think a lot of the Theatre of Blood, for example, initially was heavily inspired by the likes of Destiny, and I believe Tombs of a Mascot had some pretty heavy influence from things like Path of Exile, although it's not directly related, but Path of Exile have leagues that have different modifiers every time that they run, and Tombs of Mascot's invocation system, I think, drew a lot of inspiration from that, but then made to fit for Old School. So,
Okay, so both of you had left Jagex for separate reasons, and now you're both back. Yeah, what did you learn on your ventures away from Jagex, and what have you, I guess, enjoyed being back? I guess we'll start with you, Sween.
Sure, yes. So I left at near the end of 2021. So I think end of October. I think we did the first episode together. I think that was published on like the 1st of November, right? So it must have been around then. And I rejoined officially late January this year, so like 4.5 months ago. But prior to that, I'd been doing like maybe 4 or 5 months, probably more than 4 months of contract work for Jagex. So I left end of 2021. I joined CCP Games really quickly. There wasn't much of a gap in between the two jobs. Me joining CCP was also like quite an impulsive thing. I'd applied for other studios, and I had other offers as well. And CCP came in really late after I'd accepted an offer elsewhere. So I was just making it up as I went along, which is still true to this day. This is exactly how I ended up right back at Jagex. It wasn't like a plot to leave and come back in a different role or anything like that. It just happened that way. CCP was awesome. Really, compared to Jagex, small studio, because it was CCP London rather than the wider CCP studio in Iceland, which has a much bigger team. And it was I learned a lot in terms of like my discipline, community marketing, messaging, research, that type of stuff. And I learned a ton, and I'll get to that a bit later. But I think the biggest eye-opening thing for me was obviously Jagex and the Old School team were the first studio I'd worked at. So seeing how other studios handle things, seeing maybe problems that Jagex had struggled to deal with, and see how CCP encounter and handle the same stuff, or also maybe don't handle the same stuff as well. Just seeing the stuff in common between the two studios, and just realizing and recognizing that every game studio probably has to deal with this. Every MMO faces this problem. Was like an oddly comforting thing to learn. Like, okay, it wasn't just us struggling with it for any reason. It's just everyone working in games has to deal with similar things. So that was eye-opening.
Yeah,
it was
that's nice to know.
Really hard. Sorry, mate. I was going to say it's really difficult to join a new studio working in 2021 because of the COVID and lockdown stuff. You've got a ton of people working remotely. So this is something I learned. I took for granted. When lockdown hit, I'd already been at Jagex for years, so I was very settled, very familiar with the team and everyone and whatnot. I didn't really consider how it would be joining a new team when you're in the midst of that environment. So joining a new team on a new game at a relatively young studio, having to do it all remotely. I'd go into the office in London maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and no one else was there really. Maybe a handful of people. So you get quite familiar with those, but then everybody else you're meeting through Zoom, and that's quite piecemeal through the day and through the week that you'll actually get to spend time with them, as opposed to just being in the same place. So that made getting acclimated in a new place really quite difficult. So that's something I've taken away. And actually, when I thought about maybe people would come into whatever studio I've been working at over the last few years, it gives you a piece to be like, all right, put yourself in their shoes. It must be quite difficult to do that and to make games and then deal with players as well whilst you're struggling to get yourself settled in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like
that.
that.
If you found the same when you came back, Ayiza, to Jagex.
Yeah, let's hear your story, Ayiza.
Yeah, I feel like mine's less philosophical, sorry, than Sween's was. He's always got a great answer for everything. But I think my time of leaving Jagex and returning was a little bit more of a journey of self-discovery. As lame as that may sound, but
that sounds philosophical. I don't know.
Well, you know what? Maybe. I originally left Jagex because I was traveling a very long distance each day towards the end of my time working there, which just became a bit too much. And then I went straight from working at Jagex to streaming full time on Twitch, and I was pretty successful, I would say, for the first 6 months of that, and I really enjoyed it. But what very quickly came to light was the fact that I just wasn't very good at keeping up with creating content, and it's a lot harder than people think that it is. Especially when I was, balancing the struggles of life. Everyone goes through it, but you have bills to pay, you have relationships to manage, time to spend with people, and you really need to be quite full on with it. And I think a lot of people just disrespect that a lot and think that content creation or streaming is just easy. You get to play games all day. It sounds like a dream, and I always thought it would be a dream, and it was for a little while, until it wasn't. And then I struggled really bad. I was quite honestly depressed towards the end of my time streaming, to the point where I had to stop because it just wasn't making me happy. I was constantly worried about not being able to pay bills, which then made me have a bad time on stream, which then made me not want to stream, which then spiraled into this downward slope of, well, you need to be able to stream and be consistent for it to work, and if you're not, it doesn't. But when you don't want to stream, you can't. It's horrible. So
I totally understand.
I'm sure many people will relate if they've tried making content, and yourself especially. So about 9 months after streaming full time, I started looking back for work again, and I did a little bit of community management on the side, but it was only for a few weeks. And honestly, I had to go back to my roots, which was originally in IT. That's where I spent the majority of my professional career until I joined Jagex. So I joined an IT firm, went back to doing that, and I think the biggest thing that I learned out of everything was just the fact that I hate working in anything that isn't games now. I don't think I could ever go back into an industry that doesn't revolve around games in some capacity or something to do with the online like sphere or whatever it is environment. Because it just nothing would match the feeling that I got of working at Jagex. And yeah, I then had I had some time working for an esports organization, and I helped them build a community within their organization, which was actually really good. And I did learn a fair amount with that because it was the first time I got to build a community up from scratch. I obviously joined Jagex when Old School had been out for just shy of 5 years at that point, so it was well established. RuneScape's been out for many years, and I'd not had that experience of coming into something that I built. I joined something that already existed. So that was good. And then, yeah, COVID happened. And before I knew it, good old Sween had reached out to me and let me know that there was a position available and if I was interested, which I absolutely was. And the rest is history. So
I love
It's
that.
tried hard to make that happen.
I'm grateful of it too.
When I got you back, we weren't even officially remote. We were being quite cheeky and being like, telling people, yeah, he'll come in when he needs to come in. Don't worry. But just hoping I would eventually stay remote and go remote long term. And that gamble paid off.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, but it was always like, well, I'm here now, so I'll save that discussion for when it has to happen. Until then, I'm working from home.
I love that. I'm so glad you guys are both back. I gotta say, like, it's just heartbreaking seeing JMods that you love go away from the team, especially when you're continuing to play RuneScape. Like, it's heartbreaking. So it's amazing that you guys are both back and doing well and doing a lot of good for the game.
Hey, thank you, man.
I
We appreciate
realized that I kind of covered me joining a new studio and then kind of just handed it over to Ayiza. So I'll talk about what I actually did at the studios and where I went as well very quickly.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And thank you for saying that too, man. It's really kind of you to say, it's funny. It's sad to think that it's heartbreaking for other people when you leave and do stuff, but it's also quite nice, isn't it? It makes you feel good that you're missed or you're wanted. So thanks for that. So at CCP, I was still within community management, working on like an unannounced FPS game, and it's really cool just seeing like a game built from the very beginning. An Old School RuneScape, I like inherited a community and then grew it, but I didn't foster it from the very beginning, which is what I had the chance to do over at CCP. Now, because we weren't even announced, there was like a limit to, well, not a limit, but like a big rethink into how you do community management. And I'll be honest, I didn't do anywhere near my best work there. It was quite a struggle to adapt to building something new rather than like cultivating something. Like I'm talking about players like they're a plant here, but you know what I mean. Like
Hell yeah, players! Howdy, y'all, join my community.
That's one of those mistakes I mentioned. I just rocked up to the studio in London and that's how I was talking, and they were like, "Who's this guy?"
And cowboy hat on.
You know what? I think once I at least did. But the people I was working with are awesome. My boss at CCP was until recently, because my boss now is great, but he was the best boss I ever had. I learned so much. He knows marketing and communications and that like the back of his hand. A lot of experience in games, a lot of experience in music, working with really cool musicians, like massive names too. So just working closely with him kind of set me on my path to now working in marketing, which for a while was most of what the work I was doing, because we weren't announced. We didn't have there wasn't a subreddit for our game. I couldn't interact with players that often. So a lot of it was kind of the marketing research side of stuff. Some personal circumstances kind of led me to want to go freelance. Probably about 8 months into the CCP job. It was a shame because we were building up to doing some really cool stuff, and I've got like massive belief in the team. I can't wait to play the game when it is released. But I made the difficult decision to go freelance, and that was mainly because I just wanted like a lot of flexibility in choosing it, how and when I work, and also from where. Because at the time I was gonna go and start. I think they call them like digital nomads, just move around the world for as long as I can, whilst also avoiding getting into trouble with tax stuff and just working with a variety of studios. And I did that for a good 8 months or so. I was really lucky to obviously have connections at Jagex. So I was doing consulting, like marketing consultancy for Old School for a good while. I think I started in August of last year. Also working for a US studio, and also doing a few more bits for CCP as well, like during that initial kind of me leaving handover period too. So at the best time, I had 3 jobs stacked up. It was incredibly difficult. I burnt out really quickly, but I learned a lot because I was just working on 3 games at the same time, working with tons of different people, tons of different design teams, different publishing teams. But eventually, I did just burn out, and I became a bit more willing to listen to offers. And during like my first or second week consulting back at Jagex for Old School, my boss, and now my boss, just quite quickly was like, "Hey, what do you think about this role, like a full-time role? How about coming back?" And at that time, I just recently started freelancing. So I was like, "No, come on, this is the worst time you just say that to me." But a month later, like I said, already showing the signs of being burnt out. Even though I carried on for like another 5 or 6 months, I started to listen. And then it just started to make a lot more sense to come back in the role I am now. Obviously, in my time away, Ayiza and the rest of the community team, so like Mod Light and Mod Sani, and you also brought in Mod Goblin, the 3 of them, plus Ayiza, are doing an awesome job. Community's filled, but there was some, I think Old School's always struggled with marketing. We had, when we joined Ayiza, it was like Mod Stone, and then we had, I think, Mod Blatch, and then 2 others. I can't remember the mod names. It's almost like the way I describe the marketing job in Old School is like the defense against the dark arts teacher role. Like no one can stay in it for more than a year. And I'm hoping I'm going to buck the trend. So
Yeah, you best do. Else we're going to have words, mate.
Exclamation mark! Remind me in like 6 months' time whether or not I made it to a year. Let's see. I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. It's the new role I'm in was just perfect for all those new skills I picked up in my time freelancing and my time at CCP.
That's awesome. So what was one thing you guys both... how about I ask this? What do you guys appreciate now working at Jagex that you wouldn't have appreciated if you didn't go on your excursion out of Jagex? I guess we'll start with you, Ayiza.
That is a really good question. And I think the way I'm going to answer that is by saying there are two things. Number one is the people who work here. It is by far one of the best things about Jagex, I think. Obviously, not everyone is the same. There are some people that are more difficult to work with, as there are in any organization. But as a whole, it genuinely feels like everyone is your friend. We can meet up and go do things. It's great. So especially for those that I know, not even for myself, but for others that work at Jagex, being able to kind of just go out after work or organize a weekend. I think on Saturday, a lot of the mods as well as previous staff members are going to be meeting up for a picnic, right? And that's awesome that people have maintained connections and friendships following on from working at the studio. And then second to that is just the way that Jagex as a whole treat their employees and the benefits that we get for working at the studio. Again, I'm not going to try and sit here and like paint a perfect picture. Not everything in the world is perfect and it doesn't need to be. But as a whole, I've never been treated the same way that I've been treated at Jagex. And I do genuinely believe that they care about their staff. So that's it. That would be it for me.
Awesome. Sween?
It's the same first one for sure, the people. I mentioned earlier how difficult it was getting settled into a new place. So kind of going back to Jagex and back to Old School, it was like, I don't know, just, maybe going back to your hometown after a few years away. Do you know what I mean? It just felt really comfortable and very familiar. So I appreciate that for sure. And I think the next is how we work as a game team, just how we make decisions really collaboratively. It doesn't happen like that at other studios. I tell you, it's a lot more top down. Whereas I think Old School, is whilst we do have, decision makers and directors, executive producers and stuff when we need them, we're given the ability to make decisions ourselves, and they'll step in when we want them to. So I think how we work as a game team, it's very streamlined, it's brilliant. I wish that was the case everywhere. And then
now
the
you've
people,
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, now you've definitely made me never want to leave Jagex because I wouldn't appreciate that until I've worked, at another studio and experienced it firsthand. But now that you've said it, yeah, you're right. We actually have so much power, I guess, and decision making within our roles.
we can just text each other and be like, we need to fix this. And then the next morning, it's like, okay, I've started a conversation, I've got the ball rolling. It's cool. But
Yeah,
the good news is,
we definitely have a lot of responsibility.
Sorry, buddy.
No, I was just saying we definitely have a lot of responsibility, which is good.
Yeah. Difficult, but good for sure. But I was going to say that the good news is, for your second point, which is like, how well Jagex treats staff. I feel like that's not one of my answers, even though it is true. Jagex is a great studio to work for. It's like working at CCP was awesome. They were lovely to me. They took me to Iceland like 5 times. That's brilliant. I got to see Reykjavik so many times. It was great.
That's awesome.
It's so cool. They looked after me, and I know of many other studios which are great places to work as well.
Okay. That's great. I think honestly taking a little break from something, even though it can be hard, it's like you just need to explore new options. I know it's not the same thing at all, but I had to move across the country because I was getting so just sick and tired of being in a spot. And then you don't realize how much you actually appreciated living there. You only see the sort of negatives or the things that could be better, even though you're just fine. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like change is good. It can be bad, but for the most part, you learn a lot from changing, right? And that's how you can help yourself develop and grow as a person. So, anyone who's averse to change out there, maybe start something small, get a new hobby, let yourself meet new people, try something different. You'll be amazed at how much you'll suddenly realize things are very different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're just going to jump into some of these Twitter topics because there's a lot, and there's some really good ones. So, Mutts, first of all, huge shout out to Mutts. Second ever hardcore Ironman to get the Zuck helmet, which is just unbelievable. Like, that is just crazy. And streaming it too. Like, it's so easy to die on stream. It's so easy. And yet he did it. So, his question, he has 2 questions. Thoughts on a large part of the player base having proven so much over the years in terms of game knowledge and capabilities? What effect does that have on the projects you guys are working on? So basically just the overall skill level of the player base is just dramatically higher than it has been in previous years. I guess we'll start with you.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
sorry, I was going to jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
It's it's funny because the skill, the skill ceiling, I suppose, it's just it's off the chain, man. It's just growing and growing and growing. But I say the average skill level of every player, I don't think it's moving that much, and that makes it quite difficult because you need to be able to keep the top end players engaged and enjoying themselves, so they don't go somewhere else. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who do think of RuneScape and old school RuneScape as that game where they used to cut logs, and that's what they want to do again. So having to balance people who look for like like a really comfy nostalgic experience versus the people who are doing all sorts of outrageous stuff mechanics wise and stretching what should or shouldn't be possible. Having to balance those 2 people is difficult because, and I think the end game players might resent me for saying it, the dude who just wants to cut logs is still a very valid person to listen to. It's a tough one for sure. I can't speak too much into how it affects the decision making because I'm not a designer, but that's just like the very simple observation I'd make on it.
Okay, Ayiza.
Yeah, I don't really have all that much different to say from Sween, to be honest. I think the only difference that I have from first-hand experience over the last 2 years anyway is because I've been more focused on community than Sween would have been, and that struggle definitely shows through when we're having to go through feedback. I know that recently we've been looking at a relatively healthy balance, I feel, of different types of content, but there has, in the last year or so, maybe 2 years, been definitely a more of a focus towards that mid-game to early late game rather than like absolute end game like Inferno level content. And obviously, you know, we see a lot of comments around how people want to have that chase content to go for. Tombs of Mascot, I think, was a really good example of how the devs did an amazing job of accommodating as many people as possible. The invocation system was genius in that you can ramp the difficulty up to levels beyond probably the Inferno if you really want to. Obviously, with efficiency escape in mind, most people don't do that, but if you really want the challenge, it is there. And I think that for us is, well, for me anyway, has probably been the biggest struggle is trying to get through to those higher level players and letting them, or having them understand that the more casuals, those mid-level players that do make up a really large majority of the player base are just as equally as important, but not to sound in a way of very, you know, much dismissing the fact that they want to have that higher level content too. I would love to be able to just keep everyone happy all the time, but it's just not. In terms of like the increase in skill levels though, I am really, really interested to see what would happen if we just put something in the game that was quite literally unbeatable for months.
Yeah.
Because this is the flip side of it as well, right? If we were to release something that was insanely difficult, like 5 times harder than the Inferno is, then we would be under a lot of pressure to reduce that difficulty, because there would be the vast majority of players would not be able to access that content. That would take up a significant amount of dev time alongside that they would have missed out on other content for, which would then appease, you know, a smaller portion of the player base. But how do you effectively manage that? It is very difficult to do so. And even with the likes of Tombs of a Mascot, when some of the invocations that were enabled, quite frankly, made it very difficult, even the players who crave that higher level content, in most cases, will favor efficiency and gold per hour over their own personal challenge. So, I think trying to understand what it is that a player actually wants is one of the hardest things when it comes to the increased level, like skill levels. Do you want something that's insanely difficult but doesn't give you reward? It's just more about the challenge. Or do you want something that you can farm each day, day in, day out to make money? Or do you just want something that's super casual because you gave up on your extremely high-end PVM skills, which I don't think is ever going to happen. But yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy looking back on the Inferno and thinking I believe it was like 1 or 2 full days and nobody got a completion until Wooks did. And just to think, it would be so impressive to make a piece of content like that now. I'm just thinking, like, if you were to put out a piece of content and make it so as to not have any player beat it for 2 full days, I just think the skill level of the player base is just insane. But I think that's like a really good place to get it, is like just have one person beat it within like the first week or so. If it's months, then maybe you did overtune the difficulty truly. But yeah, that must be so hard to even, if that ever is on the table at Jagex, to make a new Inferno or something like that that's pushing the limits. What marks a still fun piece of content, but extremely challenging that would take, you know, for the average player, a month of practice? So
I think because the player base has grown, so obviously, you know, Inferno, and I think it's nearly 6. The other day, it was 6 years to the day that it was launched. So, like, we're fresh on the anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
The old school player base was much smaller than it is now. You know, following Inferno, we had the mobile launch, which brought in loads of players like instantly, but also then kind of set us on like an upwards trend, which we've continued to match. The reason I bring that up is because the average player, I'd say, is different now to the average player in 2017, in that I think we've got a lot more casual players, and I don't know if they'd be happy to wait 2 days for a completion. I think there'd be Reddit threads and people up in arms that they don't get to defeat a boss.
Yeah.
I think and it's like a genuine discussion to have in the wider games industry about accessibility. Elden Ring shipped and people demanding difficulty options and stuff. That was one of the first mods made. You mentioned like an unbeatable boss. I'm pretty sure it was Final Fantasy 11. So the first Square MMO, they had a boss that wasn't completed for I might be exaggerating, but I don't think it was beaten as intended by devs for 4 years or something, which is an insane amount of time.
4 years.
Insane.
So
I loved the moment. It was great. Like when the Inferno was happening, we'd run into we call it the atrium. It's like our big meeting lobby thing in the middle of the studio, almost like a university lecture hall, like a big screen at the bottom and then rows of steps going up for 20 rows. It's really cool. And anytime someone would get close, we'd switch over to that stream and run in and watch it happen. It was awesome. It was great. And same with Theatre of Blood, that initial difficulty, and people, I know that's completed much sooner than the Inferno was, but people still struggled with it. It was great.
Yeah. And I think this is my personal philosophy on a new Inferno, if it were to come out, it's really just, it doesn't have to be absolutely impossible. It just has to be unpredictable. So, of course, the first few people that are going into it completely blind are going to have a very, very rough time. That was the same with TOB. It's like you don't even know what to expect at Bloat. You go into Bloat. If you understood the mechanics, then it's like, oh, this is an easy room. But when people just run in and get flied to death, it's just, oh, okay, well, this is going to be a while to learn. But I think the biggest thing is just that unpredictability, and this is my own opinion on, of course, TOA is a huge success. I think numbers-wise, it just blew the other raids out of the park. But when you can just go in there and within everybody's first attempt with a 0 invocation, you get to the very ending boss and you understand the mechanics almost, and then everything's just little increments you can put up to make it more difficult. I think a new Inferno, it doesn't even have to be that impossible. It just has to be very holy crap, this new thing just spawned and I had no idea, and then I just wiped again. So it's like you're constantly, you don't even know what the end is, I think really makes it very difficult. But then as soon as you get to the end, then you start mapping it out. Okay, this is how you do it efficiently, and that's where every player starts being able to get in there and do it themselves.
You want even if it's really difficult, you want each attempt to still feel like a learning experience, as though you learned something new. You want to be able to die and then recognize why you died and how you might avoid it next time. So I think as long as, even if it's extremely difficult, I would love for the next really hard bit of PVM content we would drop, I'd love for that to be maybe up to a 72-hour window when no one's completed it. I think some people would disagree and say that's probably too difficult, but I think that's a great little window where, and as long as people are, displaying progress on streams and videos and, theory crafting and sharing them around and stuff, as long as that's happening and there is clearly progress and it doesn't feel like we've just added bullshit difficulty artificially, then I think that would be palatable from the average player who maybe wants to be able to face tank stuff and just click and get loot.
Yeah. And I also think just one last point on this that I'll mention is when you look back at early Inferno, there was no Masori. There was no, big upgrades. I mean, I'm trying to even think of, I guess we did have Tebow and everything else, but as time goes by, you do get more powerful. Your guy gets more powerful. And now it's been 6 years of the Inferno, and it's still seen as very, impressive content to complete. And so I think if you ever were to release a new Inferno, people just got to recognize, so many people for years didn't complete the Inferno. It was, years later, that's when the average player starts jumping in and doing it. Because even now, to this day, it's really cool to see a player get his first Inferno cape. It's been 6 years. And I think that's what a new Inferno 2 could be, is just people just got to understand it's not every single person is going to complete it initially, and new gear will come out in the years following. So
absolutely. I know you said it was the last point, but for me, what I think not necessarily the future of endgame content will look like, but a very good potential for us in Old School is There was I can't remember the exact name of it now, but it was Mod Husky who worked on it during Game Jam, I think, last year. And it was to do with essentially like a wave system. You fight various different waves of NPCs that could include bosses throughout, and it's essentially endless. And you keep going and going and going to see how far you can get. And that's the progression level, right? So that it can be accessible to lower level players because they get to a certain wave where maybe all of the key rewards are relatively achievable, maybe just a bit higher than Inferno level. But then beyond that, it's like the flex moments for the real good players where it's everlasting at that point, because as long as it's implemented in a way that that system can continue so that you can't reach the final wave and then complete it, it just consistently gets harder to a point where it's impossible. It is then there for when new gear comes out. It may now become possible in a year's time from now to reach that next wave, for example. And that's, again, something that's very similar in other games like Diablo with the dungeons that I mentioned, the nightmare dungeons, that you can just continue progressing them through until you can't progress any further. So I think that's something that I would really like to see, and I'd be actually really, really excited to work on something like that.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Was Husky's idea the idea where you get where you see the loot even and then you can decide to accept it or not?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, that would be that's like amazing content to watch too, is when people are risking their reward, for a new wave. I think that adds a lot more fun, at least for a viewer, if it's streamed content. So okay. Awesome. Furry Wall asks, what do you guys believe was the greatest / most influential update to come from any version of the game?
Whoa, that's a really good question. I probably should have thought about some answers to them as well. Okay, I'll just go off personal favorite here. I think one of the greatest updates that have came to the game has been introducing leagues. I think that they're a great way to experience old school in a way that you would never experience before. And it's really good for bringing in, I don't know in terms of the stats, so I'm not talking like, membership numbers here officially, but from what I've heard from people that I know, they constantly tell me, my friend started playing because of the league. They wouldn't have played otherwise, and now they're a full-time player. People get to experience content they wouldn't normally be able to complete, and it doesn't affect the main game at all because the rewards are all cosmetic. So I would say that is very much up there for me in terms of the greatest, and probably also the most influential. I think there's another way that you could interpret it though, and I want to hammer onto something that I always mention, and people are probably sick of it when I say it now, but from a more negative aspect, I would say player-owned houses have definitely been extremely influential in terms of the way that the game is now played. The fact that you can have access to unlimited teleports to pretty much everywhere in the game, restore your health, special attack, your stats, all within the matter of a few clicks, completely change the dynamic of how people play. When you go back to player-owned houses, and in the way that they are now at least, you would have to go to the bank, eat your food back up to full, until obviously the altar and from the Desert Diary was added. And that would slow down the game significantly. You wouldn't have teleport access to right next to a boss. But now that all of that is in there, there is very much an expectation that if a boss takes longer than 15 or 20 seconds to get to, it's a waste of time, and we need a teleport to take us to the entrance. Like Fasani's Nightmare, or Nightmare of whatever it is called. I'm just going to say Fasani's Nightmare.
Yeah.
I think I was going to say Nightmare of Ashy Armor then, but anyway. So that, I know that people had some issues around it because the boss itself wasn't the most enjoyable until it was updated, but I saw so many people complaining about the fact that they had a 20-second run through that little bit of sleep to get to the actual boss itself, and I'm like, okay. And the fact that the teleport was a drop and not a guarantee just given until it was eventually adjusted. But there is now an expectation that when new content comes out, there will be a teleport right next to it, to the point where we almost just anticipate that, and typically we'll add it to new content when it comes out, just to avoid that from being the case and having to add it further down the line anyway.
Yeah, that's a really tough thing to balance, I think. Just one point before I move on to Sween. I really wish, in regards to the POH itself, I wish that things cost. Either you have to put in, additional necklaces and rings into your jewelry box to do it, or something like you pay your butler, 10K every 10 uses you use of your pool or something like that. Just something where there is kind of a cost, but everything being just indefinitely free forever is just, yeah, I feel like that's had severe consequences to the game. But we're all addicted to it now, so it's really hard to change.
I was going to say, I would agree with that as well, but there is no chance that it would ever be kind of like fully accepted across the board, right? Because for a lot of people, rightly so for them, especially those that don't have access to heaps of cash in game, they spent their gold getting the construction, and the reward is the fact that they spent the money to get there in the first place, and that is understandable, but at the same time very different and difficult to deal with if you wanted to make changes to the way that it works. So
yeah. All right, Sween, what about you? Most influential / greatest update to come from any version of the game?
I'm going to go with influential, and I'm going to follow on from what Ayiza was talking about, because he offered two. One was like more about getting people to get into the game, and the other one was gameplay. And I've got quite a similar answer. I'll preface this by saying I think RS being RS3, is in a really cool place with necromancy around the corner. I think it's kind of evolved into its own game outright now. But influential would be EOC, like for RuneScape, right? Where it indirectly led to the birth of Old School RuneScape and everything we've done now. So that's the huge influence to have. But then also, at the time, I didn't enjoy the combat myself, but they've tweaked it and made it something really cool. They've given the game its own identity. So I think influential for both the outcome of RuneScape and Old School would be EOC. Is my spicy take there. And gameplay-wise, similar to Ayiza, about how it's affected content that's followed for years after. I'm going to go with Zulrah, because up until Zulrah, there wasn't that like one, repeatable, printable, and following on again from what Ayiza said, really quick to get to, relatively, even at the time, right? The drop the scrolls and then the fairy rings close by as well. I think Zulrah set a standard for what people wanted. And once you put the reward in front of people, and whether it's with the POH, with all the cool stuff in the house, which is impossible to rebalance now, or whether it's a boss that just shits out gold, people don't want to come back from that. You can't do anything else from that. So I'm not saying I do things differently, but Zulrah has a huge influence on the game and the way it is now, for sure, and it's the way we will play it.
It's funny because there was a guest I was talking to a couple weeks ago about the idea that, what's up with the double drop, like the double loots for monsters, that's completely broken the game, and it's just been shitting out, golden resources. And I'm just like, on a counterpoint, good thing we haven't gotten to triple or quadruple drops yet from bosses. I'm glad that you guys held the gate, at 2. So even after, 8 years since Zulrah. So, but yeah, that definitely was the mark of a new generation of just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess you filled the player base with a bunch of dopamine that you can't really withhold now.
Well, yeah, you can't really take it back because you gave them a taste for it, and I will confidently say that we as a team, pretty much across the board, generally hate when it comes to drop tables for content, because it is so difficult to get that balance right. Because I think for the most part, most people in the team, we're players of Old School, played it for many years as well. We've seen the changes that have came out. We would love to go reserved on every single boss encounter within the game and have them as that General Grad or God Wars dungeon as a whole style drop table, where your money is reliant on the unique drops as opposed to consistent drops. But the player base don't like that as a whole. I know some players will advocate for it, but then when it happens, those players that are used to the other types of bosses that we ourselves have put in, like we created this issue at the end of the day. Yeah, we'll want it something different. So we have to keep that in mind. And sorry, I was definitely distracted then. I just died in my dungeon. I'm going to stay at the start now and answer this one properly. Yeah, so it's a bit of a struggle because we'll be sitting there bashing heads against each other, saying like, right, we don't want to release this drop table and it be completely broken, but we know that if we don't have an appealing drop table, then players are not going to like it. They're going to ask for things to be different, or they're just going to outright say no to the content, either in the poll or just when it comes out. And obviously that's not ideal. So we spend a significant amount of time when it comes to actually looking at those drop tables and trying to figure out what is best. And you as players and yourself, Seda, have probably seen it as well, where we fuck up sometimes and the drop table can be completely on the wrong end of broken. And then it needs to be nerfed quickly. So something that we're trying to do more of now is stay on the reserve side and then buff it. But whenever we do stay on that reserve side, the first thing that happens is there's just a swarm of comments saying that it's not worth my time to do. Why would I bother doing this when something like, Theatre of Blood exists and I can make 10, 15 mil an hour or whatever it is at the, going rate. So it's a struggle. And yeah, maybe it was all spawned from that one little snake in the toxic swamp.
Yeah, that's a ongoing just problem, and I totally understand. It's impossible to please everybody because some people really love just making consistent money. And to be honest, this is just coming from an Ironman's mindset. It really sucks when you go dry on a boss and it doesn't have a generous drop table, because then you've basically just been, I don't know, it feels like you're wasting more time, where if you do have a consistent drop table, it's fine going dry. It's like you kind of almost want to go dry.
Exactly. I mean, you are the problem, so
I know.
Couldn't help it. Sorry.
No, it's totally true though. Iron Man has I would say the most influential is Iron Man. I was gonna say that. Just for, I don't know if it's the most influential out of all the games, but I think that definitely was a huge change to what at least Old School is seen as now. I mean, there's so many players. I don't know if you guys have numbers for the percentage of players that play Iron Man accounts, but it's got to be way up there.
It's very high. It's not like the majority of players are main accounts, but there are a lot of Iron accounts too. So you're right. I completely overlooked it. So I probably changed my answer to Iron. Well, I don't know. It doesn't come into our design decision making like as much as people might think, really. But,
yeah, I think it's a perceived player impact more than anything, because it's obvious to spot when a change has been made to accommodate an Iron Man, right? Versus a change just being done because of the sake of it feeling like the right game decision. So you'll probably see a lot of changes that we make and think, oh, that's just because Iron Men have been complaining, and even if it's right, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sween, I kind of cut you off there. You were.
No, you're good, mate. I was all done.
Okay. All right. Vixa just doesn't have a question, but says, I just want you to ask them how it feels to be the cutest looking community team members in the entire industry. By the way,
which was great.
I've gotten a lot of compliments based on like the thumbnail alone. It's the most HD thumbnail we've ever had. So thank you, Sween, for providing that picture. That was amazing.
You went with the one where I looked like more of a zombie, though, and as opposed to the one where, was it Sween you referred to yourself as the other day when we were sending them?
I said the other one, the option that Ayiza presented. I look like Mikey from Recess.
Dude, I sent that. I took a screenshot of that conversation. I sent it to my family text group because we all watched Recess as a kid, and they literally all started busting up laughing. I was crying, man, because I haven't seen Recess in like 2 decades. I mean, it's been forever.
So. Great show, life, eternal show. But I know it's true. I did. You didn't watch it? Oh man,
no.
You didn't get to see TJ and Vince and the other ones.
Like I know of it. I know some of the characters, but I never actually properly watched it. There's quite a few different shows like that, not even just childhood ones that I didn't watch because I was just too busy gaming.
Yeah, if you just look up Mikey from Recess, you'll You'll see a little bit of resemblance. But
Okay,
you guys are both very handsome.
See, that's him saying he agrees. I did look like Michael from Recess. He said it. So I'm not just being overly sensitive. I was right to not use that picture. I look like it in the picture we're using anyway, but I did suck it up. Ben looks good, and that's more important.
Oh,
Oh my god. Okay. Let's see.
but yeah, very very nice of Vic. So thank you. We appreciate the compliment.
Awesome. Let's see. I'm just like scrolling through. There's going to be a lot that are probably repeat questions, but so do farm run / Dayton asks, what is your most favorite thing to do in game? In Old School, not Diablo.
I'm glad you added that.
Yeah, either one of you can start.
Go on,
Okay,
Sween.
okay. All right. I haven't played for a little while. I took a break because so many other games came out. I'm probably going to pick up Old School again properly a few weeks before Desert Treasure 2 drops, is the plan. But when I was last playing, I was just really getting into learning kind of new methods to kill stuff I've been killing for a long time. So like I finally nailed like a Bofa method solo, like a Bandos and Zami and stuff. I was really enjoying that. I was on like a little run of learning PVM. It was cool. So that's what I'm going to get right back into to prepare for the new bosses that are coming.
Very cool.
Yeah, you enjoyed it because you were spooned. Yeah, I've never seen so many uniques go to someone in such a low amount of kill count in existence. It is surreal.
That does
I'm happy
make
for you, but like, you know, at the same time, it's a bit like, oh yeah, just another unique from Sween posted in our group chat.
it does
what?
make
For a
content more
while-
fun. Yeah,
It
go.
does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And for a while, I was looking at people in our old school old school team like Discord. We have like a little private one. It's kind of fun to be in. People were sharing pictures of themselves going dry at different bosses. So I was like, oh, I wonder if I just go there, will I get the drop they want? And then that just happened. And I was like, oh look, I got this by the way. So I just wait to see other people go dry, and then I'm like, all right, okay, time for me to shine.
Or just use the little Jagex potato and just spawn some item. Just take a screenshot of it.
Yeah, you know it's
I'll
doing
figure
it.
that out.
Little cheater.
All right, what about you, Ayiza? Favorite thing?
Yeah, I think for me, it honestly it varies because I think when temporary game modes come out now, I definitely spend more time on those than I do playing the game generally, at the moment anyway. But outside of temporary game modes, and that's for both the Leagues and Deadman, I love them both equally. I would say it would be any content that I can do with friends. I had such a blast when Tombs of Mascot released, and I was doing that with a bunch of people that I talk with on the daily. I think I was with like Pure Spam, Jessica. I played with Goblin for a while as well, and it was just such a blast. There's nothing better than jumping into a voice call with the homies and just potting some games, whatever it may be. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I don't have the most impressive kill count numbers, that's for sure, but yeah. Outside of that, I would say questing. I really enjoy the quests in Old School because you just don't get anything like it in any other game.
Yeah, questing. I wish I was more of a quester, but unfortunately, yeah.
I was gonna say just adding in one thing as well, like outside of raiding content, because I think that's an easy answer. Honestly, traditional rune crafting. That is by far my number one favorite thing in the game. And I know that's a really weird thing to say, but it's so relaxing and it's just, I don't know, there's something about it that just harms me.
It's nice. You know, I've been thinking, you know what would be kind of cool about rune crafting? Now, this might actually end up being a negative because then you would focus on here, I'll just tell you the idea. It would be a chance of getting like an excess amount of runes, something where you go to the altar and it's not just completely static all the time, but you would go there and you have a rare chance, or maybe you're holding something that would give you an extra chance of getting like triple runes randomly. So you get that like little dopamine hit, even though you're doing traditional rune crafting. The downside would be if you don't hit that, then you feel worse, slightly worse.
I could see it being a cool little perk if it was I mean, to be fair, with traditional runecrafting outside of essence runners not being like the most efficient of things anyway, even if it gave you the experience, I wouldn't mind that too much.
Yeah.
If it was a odd chance here, you just suddenly get a massive bump up. But that seems pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. It makes me runecrafting always makes me feel nostalgic for like that time, that like 1 week window in 2004 where I wanted to train magic and felt like I had to runecraft to be able to do so. And it's called RuneScape. Like the game is about runes. Like when we were playing in 2004, like the Rune Mysteries questline was unfolding, and being able to craft runes and like the return of rune magic to RuneScape was huge. And now it's just people are like, nah, we don't care about runes. They're not special. Where are my fucking blood packs? God damn it! Let me buy.
Yeah, we just buy them from a shop, mate. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm impressed. You guys have held the gate on that. The blood rune packs. You guys have offered little alternatives, little band-aids, little blood essence and stuff. I appreciate it.
You say that, but like I'm the opposite. I'm sorry, but like I'm at that point where I just want blood packs to be added into the game. I don't even need them because I'm not at that point on any of my accounts where it matters. Like my hardcore, I have something like 15k blood runes, but I know that if I ever got a scythe or a sanguinesty staff, they would be just deteriorated instantly.
Oh yeah, they would. But you love rune crafting, you said, right?
Yeah, I know, but I do that on my main where I have like access to full-on staminas and I don't have to worry about it, right?
I see.
But yeah, it's one of those where I understand like it's the never-ending internal turmoil of player needs versus game balance, health, and developers' desires, and there are some people within the team that would rather there be a fitting way in game that makes sense for you to get blood runes that is better than buying them from a shop, and that is infinitely better design. It would make a better game than if you just had to sit there buying packs from a shop without having to hop. I know you have to hop currently, but if the packs were there, you wouldn't. But I think the harsh reality of it is that unless something drastic was going to be done, that's just not going to happen. And I would just rather let the players just have their enjoyment and just buy the blood runes, because they're at a point now anyway where for mains it doesn't affect the economy. They're at the lowest that they have been. Obviously this wouldn't help it, but what main is going to go out there buying blood packs from a shop, really? You just buy them from the Grand Exchange anyway, right? So it is really a catering for Ironmen issue more so than anything else at all. And I get it. You don't want to have to make blood runes for 3 hours to use your scythe for 20 minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah,
it's anti
no, it's
pro.
It's really tough, especially this is one of the things that I've mentioned about Ironman. It seems as though for a time when I first started streaming and everything, I was always pro Ironman. Like Ironman's the best. And then with collection log and with just I think the never-ending chores of Ironman. I think there's this like false vision for Ironman that think like if I progress enough on this account, I'll eventually become a main. Basically, like I'll eventually never have to worry about supplies again because I'll just have done so much. This is a secret to all of you guys. It never ends. The chores never end. So just keep that in mind. But I think we're at the era of mains, where mains really do get the satisfaction of kind of being an Iron Man with the collection log. I think for so long, the real fun of Iron Man was just you get something and you got it on your account. But now you sort of have that with collection log.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think Iron Man as a whole is a very interesting one because is cynical the right word? I don't know. I always just call myself grumpy when I say these things. Is that like catering for Iron Man? I think there are many instances where it makes sense, and that there are gameplay choices that you have to make that as a main do not impact you whatsoever. And they never would. But as an Iron Man, it just doesn't really make all that much sense. And obviously, over time, we've changed a lot of things, and it has undoubtedly made the Iron Man experience infinitely easier than when it was on release. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? I think that's a difficult question to answer because, in my eyes, I would have been, as a player, the way that I approach games, I would have been okay accepting Iron Man never changing to suit Iron Man from the day that it was implemented until the last update that the game ever received. As long as I got those updates in the same way that mains do, I would be fine with it. Because the way I approach things is like, I am putting myself into that situation. I'm making the choice to have that account and play this way. These are the limitations that are set on it. That's the reason why I played Ironman over a main. But there are obviously a lot of people that are very different in the way that they approach, and they want to play Ironman because they enjoy it, and they want their experience to be much more enjoyable as an Ironman. And really, the changes, obviously over time, have been really big. But in the small changes individually, then they're pretty insignificant for the most part. So yeah, that's a difficult one to balance, and that's probably why you see a lot of people saying the game's catered towards Ironmen. But if we have a majority of people that are playing Ironman, it would just be stupid to not give those players who are paying membership and have a right to be able to have updates the same way that mains do, to just say no to them because some people out there believe that Ironmen should have stayed the way that it was and never have any changes to make the experience better. And I think as a whole, Ironman has improved vastly from what it was when it was first implemented anyway. So maybe it is a good thing. But yeah, my personal take on it is that I would be fine with it being as hardcore as it could be. Because that would be why I would choose to play it and have it as that flex. Similarly with like these stretch items too. Some people were talking about necks. Sorry, I'm going on a rant here. But with like necks having drop rates in the 1 in whatever thousand it was, and it takes so many hundreds of hours to get the item. Completely unhealthy when you think about it in terms of a gameplay experience, but if you really want that item and you get that item, you get to flex it and you can grind for it. And those long-term goals are something that I strive for in games. I wouldn't call myself a completionist by any form, but if there's an option to like play hardcore or to go the harder route, I will take it because I like that challenge. Unless I'm playing Diablo because I've died so many times, it would have been a bitter experience, but still. Yeah. Sorry, I'll stop now.
No, I'll just bring up one last thing and until we ask another question. But one of it was, going back to Blood Rune packs, and like you just want to have fun. You just want to like do the content that you want to enjoy immediately. I just want to say, like, I feel like the problem is bots that ruin this, is the idea that skilling can actually be good and can actually make you money. I don't think that's really a thing you can even do because of the fact that bots exist, and skilling generally is very easy to just program a bot to do. But it would be amazing if skilling, back in the day, but when Old School first came out, runecrafting natures was the best moneymaker. Like, that's so insane to think of a skilling method being the best moneymaker. And we just don't have that anymore. So now skilling is like just absolute chores. It's just, you have to do this and there's no incentive to do it other than just leveling up, which sucks. But
yeah, it does. You're right. But at the same time, as you've said, like, bots exist. There's no point trying to pretend that they don't. And yeah, skilling activities as a whole are relatively easy to bot. And whilst I know that currently the situation from the community's perspective is not great right now, and we still do make every effort to tackle bots. I think Sween spoke about this before in a previous interview. It's an arms race, right? And even if we were to put the most resource that you could imagine in the world against stopping bots, people would still find a way. And if they didn't bot, then they would just gold farm manually and sell, which would still cause the same problem. So it is a really difficult thing to manage. And I wish that we had like a really easy solution to it, because I would love to re-experience those moments where skilling was profitable. I just think we're so far past that as a game, and the way that the game has like developed anyway now, that we just won't really get back to that situation, at least not easily. So
yeah. Okay. If you could force one thing into the game without a poll, what would it be? Sween?
Sailing. I think players will love it. And then I think that will get the ball rolling for being open toward other skills too. And I think people would then, having experienced the skill, I think they'd be more open-minded about receiving skills in the future. Because I think just almost as with leagues, when we first pitched the idea of leagues, there was no reference point. People were very unsure. We said, hey, we weren't going to poll it because we don't have to do it technically because it's a different game mode, which is how we did that. But then when Twisting Thing dropped and people were like, okay, cool, I get what you're doing here. And they were then looking forward to, the second league. And then they played that and they loved it and so on. And I think the same thing would happen with the new skill, to be honest. And sailing, it's coming along so nicely. The team are doing a great job in terms of presenting it to the player base. I'm really stoked to kind of like following it. I'm not close to the project really. I'm seeing the kind of the discussions being had and the blogs come in before they're published, and the really cool work from Gentle Tractor and Screek Monge in terms of getting I don't know if I said that right, but
no, I think you did.
Getting the infographics, yeah, in terms of getting the infographics and the videos ready, right? It's so great. So I've got very high hopes. I hope it passes, but I would add it without a poll, any chance I could.
Okay, Ayiza.
Honestly, I'm going to be really boring and just agree with Sween on that one. I think just a new skill generally would be good. I think sailing is going to be absolutely fantastic when it releases, and just re-echoing that the team are doing such a bloody good job with it, and we are genuinely as a community team working our asses off, and props to ModLite for this because she has really just been the driving force from the community side to work with the players as much as possible, because we really want them to also see just how much potential it would have, and for there to be a chance of it to be added to the game. And it's not just because I'm a sailing shill. I originally and still, would have chosen shamanism as my personal favorite first skill to go into the game. But I'm actually really glad that sailing was the one that has been chosen, because I think it will make for a much better first skill than shamanism would have, because it just shows how much potential we have as a dev team to actually be creative and just do something different. Yeah. Whereas shamanism would have been very similar to, it would have still been different, but the basis of shamanism was very similar to the core skills that we already have in old school, which was a good and bad thing. I think that's why a lot of people resonated with it, because it was more familiar. But I think people are going to be blown away by sailing should it pass. So yeah.
Okay.
I have a more controversial answer to it as well, but I'm not sure if I want to go into that yet. Maybe there's another question that I can pull that one out of, so I'll save it for now.
I want to ask you guys. So let's just say a player was kind of excited for a new skill, but now is having second thoughts. Is there something you can say that would make them re-hyped for sailing, or something you can, not leak, but just something you can say that might pique their interest again about sailing specifically, not just a new skill?
About sailing specifically? Go on, sorry.
About sailing specifically, I would say just engage with as much of the content we're putting out as possible. I was also in the kind of camp of I'd rather shamanism or taming than sailing, to be honest. Sailing was my least favorite. But I think, where did my mind really change and start to rally around the skill? I think some community suggestions, particularly Gentle Tractors. I can't remember the name of the pitch, but that massive sea expansion. It looked very kind of similar to WoW, the big maelstrom in the middle and stuff. It looked really cool. And then Mod Nin's prototype work was so good. When he showed that in Game Jam, and we was all in the auditorium again, you see it and you visualize it. And even though obviously it's bare bones, there's black sky, or like the black void and the old school sea tiles, and the boat was moving a little bit jankily, you see it and you start to believe, and then you think, okay, I know what our art team can do with this. I know what our devs and designers can do with this. So yeah, I think just look at the real skeleton, the real bare bones of what we're pitching, and then just look at the quality we've introduced and content over the last couple of years, and then I think just come on the journey with us. You've got plenty of opportunities to have your say. So if you're having second doubts or second thoughts about your vote, or even if you didn't vote for sailing originally, I'd say just try and be a bit, maybe approach it as a bit indifferent as possible, rather than opposed to it. Read the blogs, watch the videos, and just try and put yourself in the shoes where you're willing to listen. And I think you'd be pleasantly surprised.
Awesome. Ayiza, any other thoughts?
Not really. I'm trying to think of like a key thing that I could say that hasn't already been shown already. But like, if what you've seen so far, first of all, if you haven't seen what we've done so far, like Sween says, make sure that you check out everything we've been doing. Pretty much as possible, probably more than we should be doing, in all honesty. If you don't want to read the blogs, we have videos. If you don't want to watch a video, we have images. If you don't want to look at an image, we have stage discussions that are like a podcast that you can listen to. Literally, we have gone above and beyond to try and make sure that the information is out there as much as possible. So, first of all, yeah, check out everything that we've done so far. I think the thing that I would say is that, because I personally don't believe that there is a way to turn around people who are just vehemently against sailing into wanting sailing. If you just don't want it as a skill, then fair enough. I hope that there is a way that we can show you otherwise, but I think it's going to be a very difficult thing to do without it being in-game for you to experience. And that's what I would say, is wait for it to come out in the game. Give it a chance. Give it a fair shot, because we really believe in sailing as a team. There's a lot of players in the community that really believe in sailing as well. And it will open up doors for us to explore other skills in the future. You know, we've already said that we would want to put shamanism into refinement if the players wanted it after sailing was finished, if it did pass. And what else could come after that? You know, I am so excited for sailing, because we are going to be doing things that we've never done before in the game, right? And if you look at the thing like Tombs of Amaska as an example of recent content that I think was absolutely incredible. Super innovative, absolutely beautiful in terms of its art, the design, the mechanics. And if that's what we can do with a raid, imagine what we can do with an entire skill that opens up a new continent, pretty much, like a whole new map. The sea has never been explored before. All the new pieces of content that you can access as a result of that. Maybe I am actually selling sailing to people now, I think about it. But like, yeah, if you like Tombs of Amaska, well, what about the underwater version of Tombs of Amaska? I was going to try and be funny, but like, I can't. I think in the moment.
As long as flippers work. Did you know the flippers still don't work underneath fishing trawler?
Okay,
I'm sorry,
right,
I have to say that. I have to say, because it's just been years since.
Is this a Q&A or is it a podcast?
It's a Sae Bae cast. It's the same. It's my agenda. Yeah, entering it.
But yeah, just keep an open mind, and maybe you don't like sailing as a skill, but what about the concept of sailing and the potential that it has to unlock the rest of the game, like for the rest of the game and for the players? It is basically what I would go with, I think.
I love it. Flo the Gamer asks, when Leagues 4?
So, for the Winter Summit, we said, we're not going to talk about leagues in the Winter Summit, so don't bother us, don't pester us, please. We'll tell you more at the Summer Summit. And that's still the same case. I'm sorry, we don't have anything new to share. But maybe we can, Ayiza and I have both been working on getting the Summer Summit ready. We've got a date in mind. We're not ready to announce it yet. But, yeah, maybe tune into that.
Okay.
Well said.
Awesome. Okay. Mitch asks, how do you feel the poll system has changed over the years? Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel at the start of OSRS, it wasn't nearly as in depth as it is now. Is that making development counterproductive or slowing it down? Also, there's less events, etc. It feels, are the team as happy? So a bunch of different questions, mainly regarding the poll system.
Oh, interesting one. You know what? That's a perfect segue. Remember I said I had a controversial thing I was going to raise about like what would I do without a poll? So I'll save that one till the end of this, but I'll talk about the polls part for sure. How do we feel about them? And the point that Mitch raised there was that they feel way more in depth now than they used to. Is that right?
Yeah, in depth.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, it's very true. I think if you went back like before the new polling charter was introduced, it was very much getting to the point of being way too granular, too much being polled that was just not necessary, too many specifics, and that for sure had implications for both the players and also the dev team. Players were experiencing burnout. We would see less and less votes per poll, and the devs felt like a lot of their creative freedom was restricted because every minor detail needed to go through the system. And then obviously we looked at making a change, and the polling charter sought to do that. So I think this year has been very experimental for us because it's the first time that we've actually implemented it. So we're still learning. But the aim is that going forward, the polls should be a lot less granular than they are. We've now introduced what we call the RuneLite stage, which is providing very top-level information. To say, should we actually start developing this, and then we can poll the specifics at a later date. And those specifics in most cases should just be around the premise of rewards, maybe a certain area that we want to get extra information on or clarity around. We don't want to make a decision ourselves, we want to give that to the players. We will look to poll, but we are trying to get back to that era of more top level polls for content as opposed to having everything scrutinized down to the T in a blog and then having 50 questions in a poll for one piece of content. But we're also, as I said, experimenting this year and trying to find our feet with it and exactly what is that right balance between giving enough information so that players feel like they're able to actually vote informed versus giving too much and going down that road of, basically burning everyone out across the board. I think the skill has been one of the biggest highlights of that, even though we've not actually polled any of the individual granular pieces of it just yet. That's still to come if the skill was to pass. But just the length that we've gone to in terms of consultation, for example, has been really extensive. But I think that we're getting there. I think we've made some really good improvements. If you look at the likes of forestry, for example, I think in previous iterations of polling, we probably would have looked at, maybe even polling individual effects of the events or how much reward you would get from the events. Whereas this time it was like, should we update the core woodcutting? Should we add these events? Should we add these rewards? And should we explore these rewards? And that's pretty much all that you got. And then we worked with it, came back and presented something. So yeah, difficult one. I feel like we're on the right tracks. I would love for us to get to a position where at the start of the year, we're able to just basically go out with our entire perceived roadmap of content that we would like to release and greenlight it for the entire year. So say, for example, we want to have 2 raids, 3 skilling updates, 2 PvP updates, a league with the rewards. I don't know what else we could throw in there, but that's all just put out there as should we do those things? And then when it comes to actually starting developing them, then we'll talk about the rewards, but you get no information other than updates during our development.
What year is this where we're dropping 2 raids in the league?
I know, I'm living in dreamland, mate. I know, but all right, it's an example. So yeah, I think that we're getting there. I think the new system that we implemented is much better than what we had before. I should bloody hope so, because I was the one that put it together, and if not, I kind of failed. But yeah, I'd be keen to understand actually how other players feel about it, because it is a really important part of Old School. It's part of its core now, and we are known as the game that polls everything to the players. But there has to be a balance at some point. I would love for us to get to the place of being able to explore content and just excite players again by releasing something that you know nothing about other than the fact that you voted for it in the first place. But understandably, the game's been out for 10 years. We've polled in a certain way for so long. I think those early polls that were being referred to by Mitch were literally in the first few years of Old School being out, where there wasn't really a community management team, there wasn't an extensive dev team, the player base was nowhere near as big as it was now, so it was a lot easier to be as fluid as they were back then. Now we have a lot more things to consider, and for the most part, for us in CM anyway, the reason we went down that road of really long polls and a lot of information was because we just wanted to make sure that players were really happy with the content before it came out, and to also secure the fact that the content itself would pass. We were working in a I would say, a really unhealthy way, to be honest, which is why we made the change. We would be polling stuff that would already be halfway into development. And if they were to fail at that point, then we could have wasted months worth of dev time that could have been worked else on put elsewhere.
Yep.
So we really wanted to just ensure the best amount of success. So the way we do that is, okay, we'll just go as granular as possible, because that way there are no surprises. People can't turn around and say, well, what about this? That's going to make me vote no because I don't know about that. And it's like, okay, we preempt that and we put that out to the players. But, we've also seen that in the long term, that's not so beneficial, especially as the player base grows and player habits change. It's too difficult to stay on top of the dynamic of what every player wants at any given moment in time. So we are trying to scale back. I think that we're on the right path. For my controversial opinion, I'll wrap up with this and let Sween, just reveal whatever he wants to reveal. I would like us, and this isn't going to happen for what it's worth, this is personal opinion, and I'll caveat this with saying I used to be the exact opposite of what I'm about to say. The exact opposite. I was a vehement supporter of the poll system, but I actually really think that Old School would thrive just as much as it does now, if not even more, if the poll system in the form that it is in the moment didn't exist. And we were able to just release content as and when we wanted to, in the way that we saw fit, based off our understanding of the player base now, because we know so much more than we used to before. We are so much closer to the players than we ever have been before. And I feel like we have the best team that we've ever had before as well. Like, Old School as a team are at its strongest that I've known it for the last 5 years at least. So yeah, I would like to see the polls turn into more advisory rather than dictatory, if that's a word. I think it is.
So I'm gonna just add something briefly before Sween adds his remarks. I honestly am in full agreement with you guys kind of just taking the wheel on some of these updates. Have you considered polling something that says, would you guys be interested in us releasing something where we don't tell you, but it won't be a huge update. It'll just be a new boss or something, but we're not going to tell you anything, and then see if 70% votes yes to that. So you truly do have full control over something, but it's still polled as would you guys be willing to give us trust and allow us to make an update without your guys' basically feedback?
I think considering it in an official capacity, it would be wrong of me to say yes, because I don't recall any moment where that has happened with at least me being present at the time. Have I thought about it though? Absolutely. And is there a future where we could get to that point? I think so. If we continue to prove the polling charter that we have at the moment works, and we continue to solidify trust within the community when it comes to the content we release, I think that we could get there. I don't think it would have been possible had we not done the polling charter reform beforehand. And I also want to make sure that everyone understands that that's not the reason that we made changes to the polling system. The reason we made those were for the health of the game and for also the development team. The post itself explains it. If you want to see more, just check out the homepage of oldschoolrunescape.com, and it's listed on the left-hand side, just near game status page, which you can also go to check if there are any issues with the game, by the way. But yeah, I think with that in place, and over time, as that trust with a new way of polling or a different way of polling continues to grow, I hope so.
Awesome. Sween, what are your thoughts on the polling system?
I love it. I think it's a very unique proposition that we have. I think, sure, I'd make some changes. I'd like to see us go a bit more advisory. But I don't know, the Democrat in me does I like just the fact that players have the option to just say no if they want to say no. It's awesome. And especially, looking at day-to-day life and politics and votes and elections and stuff, we don't have anywhere near as much control as we do with Old School. It's just nice to still have that. I mean, one thing I'd encourage would be for players to maybe... Oh, you know what? The birthday stream we did this year when our CEO came on and was talking about when Old School first was released. Give that a listen. Phil, Mod Pips, goes into a lot of detail. There's a lot of new stories and stuff. And he basically said what I'm going to say, which is the poll system, we've just been making up as we've gone along. That's all Old School is. We're making up as we go along. And I think we've done a pretty good job so far. While Ayiza was talking and answering, I had a little look back at some of the earlier polls, and one really stuck out to me, which was a content poll 13 from November 2013. Imagine if we polled these questions in the same way they are today, and
I'm ready for
what
this.
players would say, shall we introduce a cooperative Slayer system so you can slay with friends? And that's it. There's no talk about how it's going to affect, what tasks, how often, how does it work? What's the XP? Are you breaking the game? Is it going to shit out X, blah, blah, blah? Should we introduce a new Slayer Master, similar in level to Simona? That's the question. There's no talk about what monster is going to be assigned or anything like that. Nothing about that in the devlog either. And then this one, it's cool. Should we introduce a new Slayer dungeon with segregated Slayer monsters, which you can only attack if you have them as an assignment? So, Stronghold Slayer dungeon, that's how it was added. There's no talk about what's going to be in there or how easy it is to bank and restock or cannons and whatnot. It's just that question. It's such a far cry from, say, some of the detail we were going into like a year or 2 years ago.
Oh yeah,
It's
stark
funny.
difference.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just because we've been making it up as we've gone along. We've responded to player needs at the time. I say like 2018 to that kind of era, players were really keen on understanding the effect and impact of what we're adding. So everything needed to have XP rates, and then we'd get them wrong because the content doesn't exist yet. We're only going by the best of knowledge. But then some of those players would say, "You lied. You lied. It was malicious. You did it on purpose. You lied to us. You cheated to get into the game." When actually, we just tried to release something and balance it as best we can. It didn't exist, and then it existed. Come on, it's difficult.
I might be just part of that problem, but yeah.
No, it's cool. I get it. I understand why, but that's just it is what it is. I understand why players are the way they are, and they're well within their rights to be. But I was just kind of drawing attention to the contrast and how we were, some of the questions from then to like 2018, that kind of era, and then to now, where some of these questions do read as almost, some of these questions in 2013, to clarify, do read as almost like the green light polls we have now. It's quite funny to see us revert back to that, but with a better process behind it in terms of development.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's so hard to please everybody too, and yeah, it's tough because as much as I think a large portion of the player base would love for the team, passionate devs to make content that they're passionate about without having to go through all these steps of polling. The game is what it is because, we do have the polling system. I think that's a big part of it, and losing that, I think, just in and of itself, even if updates continue to be good, I think there would just be this almost like the shroud of like mistrust or something that would, I don't know.
Yeah.
Come.
You kind of hit it there with what I was just gonna follow up on from your comment there was that mistrust exists for so many players, and even for players that weren't around or playing RuneScape at the time, when things that happened that they didn't agree with, that is very much in everyone's mind, and it gets shared very often. And I actually think it's probably one of the most difficult things to deal with now. There are so many times where we'll see things that will crop up where players have been like, Jagex have done this just so that they can do this. It's all a ploy. They're doing it to... There's a theory of some sort, I can't remember the term for it, where like you basically do something bad on purpose to then do something good so that you can like trick them. And like that's just not true. We just make mistakes sometimes. But like everyone is so easy, like so quickly to jump on the train of like, just being like cynical and that distrust. So the polling system definitely keeps that in check. And I think that for those people that do have those trust issues with Jagex, and rightly so for them, if they've experienced it or whatnot, then that will be the first thing that they would revert to if it was a conversation of should we remove the poll system. So I don't think we should remove it, by the way, outright. Even if we did do what I suggested, I would still like to see the advisory part be there.
Yeah.
And the polls used to dictate changes and feedback just no longer be holding content hostage. It would be more the actual detail behind the content that players would be deciding on. So.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Okay, 42 asks, endgame content like TOB Inferno has a huge publicity effect for the game. Why is this not valued? We've kind of already covered this. He also has 2 more questions. I'll just list them right now. How would you describe the direction the game is heading versus how you'd prefer it? And minimum number of clicks for Prif course.
I've never done the Frith course, so
It's not that great anyway, so that's fine.
yeah. Well, I tell a lie. I did do it because I got to playtest Song of the Elves back when I was full-time streaming. I got invited in, so I did do it, but I can't remember it, and I've not done it since. So
I don't know the minimum number of clicks either. So yeah,
that's too much information in someone's mind. I've kind of got the actual questions now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Direction of the game. I think the direction of the game is very bright. I came back for a reason because I think we're going to be doing great stuff. Mod Marcos, our EP, executive producer, is very, very popular with the team. He's kind of empowering the team to deliver content for every player. So we keep saying it's really difficult to make everyone happy. That's right, it's true, but he's giving us a chance to do so. And I think that's really positive. It feels also like players seem to be moving in the same kind of direction when it comes to what they want as well. So yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we had a really difficult 2020 into 2021. You only need to look at the stuff we released or the amount of content, and part of that, and a huge part of that, is down to the disruption caused by COVID and stuff. But I think we also didn't have the right kind of leadership structure in place, but now we do, and now things are firmly back on track, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say the same. I'm really excited for the future of Old School. We've got a new skill on the horizon, a whole bunch of other content that we're yet to talk about. Stay tuned for the potential news of a summer summit. Find out a little bit more there. But yeah, like I said earlier, that I truly believe that the Old School team is the strongest that it's ever been in the history of Old School existing, and that is such an amazing thing to be able to say. I have so much confidence in every member of the team that works on Old School, from every aspect of what we do. So I like it. I like what we're doing. I like where we're going. I like how the roadmap is being changed slightly to accommodate various different areas of the game. Hopefully players have seen that this year as well. Focus on PvP with a mix of quests, some skilling changes, a new raid. There's still loads more to come for the second half of the year. So yeah, the future's bright. The future's Old School.
Awesome. Just going to touch on that first thing he brought up, even though we already touched on it. Do you guys have any data or anything that can even really tell what the effect is of the publicity of, Inferno or TOB, where 30,000 people are watching Wooks or something? Is that even relevant, on your guys' end? Does that have a big effect? I know us as players, I think we see that as this is a huge mark of success, but does it show in the numbers on your guys' end at all?
It shows. It's something to be proud of for sure. But in terms of I think the question was about the effect that the publicity has. So I think commercially, did that level of publicity for the Inferno and Theatre of Blood translate into lots of players joining the game or coming back to the game or subscribing? No, not really. Minimal impact. And that was a learning experience, and we've learned from that. And it's partly why some endgame content now has been adapted to become more accessible. Because if you think about it, just because there's some really cool content on the front page of Twitch, or maybe it's trending on YouTube or something, a player might be like, "Oh, okay, cool," and then they look, and then they realize they can't access it for how long? I don't know. 2017, right? You're watching the Inferno, 2017 gear and stats and stuff. You're very far away from being able to attempt it from a fresh account. Someone watching that stream for the first time, but the publicity is still really valuable. It's just not. It's not as cut and dry as, well, this got loads of views, so it must be great for the game. You can do tons of stuff like that might not necessarily not be good for the game. Commercially, the stuff that's good for games is getting in front of brand new audiences. So mobile was great. Leagues is awesome. It was a new opportunity for players to rally around and join from day. You can start leagues and you've got XP boost and stuff. So it's appealing to new players. If we were to move into new platforms or new territories, languages and stuff, when there are no imminent plans to do that, but if we were, that's the type of thing that's probably going to be like the big, it's proper like crap marketing term, but that's like the big needle mover if we're only thinking in terms of commercial. But we also do value viewership as a success metric too. It's a state of it's less a commercial number and more like an indicator of how healthy the community is, which is still really valuable to us. I mean, it's one we have like 2 main objectives for the year for our like a little publishing team that so Ayiza and I are part of, and one of them is just to grow the player base, straightforward, and the other one is to be like a leader in community sentiment. So we still do value viewership as a part of that too. If it's good for creators, it's good for the game, just because they're being looked after. They've got lots of viewers, and they're going to carry on making content, even though that's not a direct translation into a new player or a new subscriber. It's a good indicator of health, which is a good indicator of how healthy we are as a game long term. Because it's aspirational content at the end of the day too. If a player does come in, having something to work toward, like the Inferno, is what's going to keep them driving towards grinding and making progress in the game and sticking with it.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, Ayiza.
I don't think I can say anything that Sween hasn't already said. So.
All right. Well, I want to ask So I was just asking about the effect of like viewership with those big updates. How big is it? If you guys even know, if there's a way to know, of just the community, as in like the content creators, the YouTubers, the streamers, how big of an effect does that have on the overall player base? I think a lot of the time the player base, if you are in that content creator scene, it almost seems like all the players do watch Twitch and watch YouTube, but there's probably a huge number of players that don't maybe watch that. But I guess my question is, how big of an impact does having like really amazing content creators have on the game?
I can't talk in terms of membership, but I'll happily talk on a sentiment level, because for us, sentiment within community is a pretty significant stat that we want to look towards. The more positive people are talking about the game, obviously the better it is for us. And in terms of like content creation, I would say that it's one of the largest drivers for positive sentiment for us across the board. Social media is the largest negative driver, especially when you see, like more negative threads on the likes of Reddit, but also across Twitter. But YouTube is always consistently positive, and we attribute that towards our creators and the work that they do. So we can often notice that if there's been like a big update and a lot of our creators have started making videos on them, I say our creators, old school creators, sorry, have made content around it, then that will help drive increased positive sentiment. And we're able to attribute, the scale of that as well. And it is pretty significant when you look at the whole community. But yeah, maybe Sween, I don't know if there's much you can say in terms of the actual membership side of things, but.
No, that's really hard to quantify. We've got a lot of behind the scenes tech work, looking at how we can better attribute marketing. It's really cool, but also really boring. But going forward, we should be able to better have an idea of what the effects of such the thriving content creator scene we've got is. But I've just pulled up some results from the 2022 annual survey just to see if there's any indicator of how many people self-report watching streams and stuff. We've kind of asked stuff in an odd way in hindsight. I wasn't here, so I'm going to blame it on my absence. But we asked players, when learning about Old School, how would you prefer to get information? So this is less about what you're doing in terms of entertainment and watching stuff, and more focused on the educational learning about what's going on with the game. 29% of players said they follow Old School RuneScape YouTube videos. Now bear in mind, to complete this survey, you're probably going to be a bit more engaged with what we're up to. So the average player didn't complete the survey. So maybe that 29% becomes, I don't know, 20%. I'm making that up. So maybe 1/5 of players watch Old School RuneScape YouTube videos, which is huge. which means that there's a massive amount of influence, YouTubers, and then I think if you know, it makes sense to say that's probably a similar amount to watch live streams generally too.
Yeah.
So it's not quite answering your question, but maybe that's a bit of insight into the influence they have. Maybe not as much as you might think, but still a huge amount. Like if a fifth of our players are in, you know, following your every word, then it could be dangerous.
Okay. Yeah, my question was a bit, vague anyway. But okay, so Blueberry Central asks, what do you guys think Jagex should do to attract the new generation of people to play Old School?
Be more open and visible with our marketing, which we're doing a good job of. It's really important. People need to see what we're up to. Just making new content is fine, but players need to hear about the content. So that's where we have to kind of bridge the gap. Or we put ourselves on new platforms. I hate to say it, but we need to stay more up to date with trends, like better optimizing what we're doing on YouTube, what we're doing and how we're handling our Twitch. Also, I'd say up and coming, but it's there and we just haven't used it yet. Like TikTok, I hate it, but it is there. People use it. It's very, very popular. And then I think looking at the game, and looking at the success of say 117 HD and then what HDOS are doing, I think an optional graphical upgrade, official graphical upgrade, is really important. I wouldn't want to change anything to do with how the gameplay works or game mechanics. We are the game we are. Mm-hmm. But in terms of presentation and how we talk about it and where we talk about it, that's where the biggest opportunity is, I think.
Yeah. Now I don't know if it's like against your guys's I don't even know, but whenever we see play tests or anything like that, it seems as that whenever like I'm watching a Q&A and you guys are in game, you always get that black sky, the black void. And it's like the render distance is so bad. It's like, is that just because you have to, or have you guys ever considered, like, would it be ethical for you guys to like play on 117 HD or something that like shows the game a little bit better? Because I swear that sailing presentation, even though yes, it's still in the skeleton phases, it didn't.
Yeah.
I don't think it captured the imagination too well of people.
So like,
I think we no, you go. You answer.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say like the reality is that we can't. So the way that the sailing demo, for example, was set up was with a test environment on our servers. With it was essentially running a different version of the client entirely. So RuneLite just simply can't work alongside of it. Similarly, with our more enhanced client that we have available now as well, it just won't function with it until it's been actually developed to work with those client versions. It very much was in a test environment, and that goes the same for a lot of the things that you see when we are demoing them. It's because they're not converted into what is like live game ready or a live game state. So the client versions are incorrect. There's a lot of, I don't want to say hacks, but I think it's the best way as a non-technical person to say it. A lot of technical hacks that are done to make things work the way that they do when they wouldn't normally work that way, for the purpose of being able to prove that it's possible that they can, the devs will then actually develop what is needed to make that happen. But yeah, for the most part, it's just because we simply can't. We do have the functionality to be able to load test content through RuneLite. I believe that was something that was worked on alongside the team at RuneLite and our engine team, so that we could have access to those extra features and also make sure that certain things just work the way they should, or at least appear the way they should, so we can at times give a bit of a heads up to the team where possible over at RuneLite, that is, and other clients. But that is again reliant on the fact that the content that's being tested is in a release ready state. So we have RC, which is known as release content. When it's in that state, that means that it is essentially ready to be added to the game after it's been finally tested, and that can then be worked on in the likes of RuneLite or the enhanced client and stuff. But if it doesn't reach that phase, it just won't work.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Do you have anything to add, Sween? Or are we good?
I think RC is release candidate.
Oh, candidate then. Okay, instead of content.
I don't know. But also...
he was just stuck on that. He didn't even hear the rest of what you were saying.
No. I'm just winding him up. That's a good impression, buddy.
Yeah, practice that one just for today.
I'm just winding her up. No, you're right. The sailing stuff, it could have looked better had we had the ability to do so.
Yeah.
So remote controlled. Sorry.
I'm hoping to. It'd be nice to be able to show stuff in a more visually appealing way, especially because a lot of it is us being like, "Hey, look how cool this is," and then it doesn't look cool, even though the technical stuff is awesome. It needs to look good too to marry up with it properly.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful in the future we'll be able to.
That would be cool.
The sailing demo especially, like, we were so begrudged to like release it on that tech demo because of the fact that we knew people would talk about the skybox and the draw distance and such. And well, lo and behold, guess what happened?
That's
every single comment was about it. I'm like, yep, we know. Even though we put so many disclaimers with text printed on the screen, it's still the one thing that people bring up, and it's
we're so visual. Like, we need to. Whatever we see is what is going to be in our imagination, and so that's just unfortunate, I guess. But luckily, we can know that everything we saw is the worst it'll look. So.
Yeah, I mean, we never even planned to show that to anyone. We had no idea that it was being worked on. Like, honestly, that was done during Game Jam by Mod Nin because he wanted to prove that it was possible. And we hadn't expected that to be done. So when we got shown it, we were just all blown away. And I made the call there and then. I was like, right, we have to show this to the players. No matter what backlash we get from the way that it looks, if they see this, it's going to suddenly prove that it's possible. And so many people out there doubt the fact that we could actually make sailing work. And lo and behold, Mod Nin, the absolute genius that he is, was able to pull it off in 4 days, I think it was. So, that's why, if we had planned to have done it, we would have got it to a point where it would have looked much better, but we hadn't. The point where that was going to be shown was literally ready the week afterwards, and we've got a pretty tight schedule to work towards with sailing to make sure that we can finish consultation in a good enough time so that we still have enough development time to make the skill release in good time. Because obviously if we keep going for months and months and months, it just pushes the potential release if it was to pass back. So it was just one of those where we just have to accept it, and we hope that players will just see the good of it and look past the fact that it's a technical demo that looks less than ideal.
I do have a quick question. So if sailing is released, is all the water in the game going to be replaced by a new graphical enhanced water besides the blue carpet that we know and love? Well, I don't know about love, but no.
I believe it's been mentioned in a blog in the first one, in fact, around navigation. But we are discussing, changing the way that the water looks and acts. I think it needs to be updated. You can't just keep the current carpet texture. So I imagine to some degree, I can't confirm just yet because a lot of these things, like, we've very much like touched the surface of, checked if it's actually technically feasibly possible, but until the skill actually passes, we won't actually go into committing on anything on it. But I would say pretty confidently that we would have to look at changing it in some way, shape or form. But the key thing to remember is that anything that we do still needs to make it feel true to old school and old school style. And I would hope to think that many people out there will believe that is the case with a lot of the recent developments the art team have been doing, over the course of the last 12 months.
Yeah, I'm just imagining.
I wouldn't want to change all the water. Like, look at some of that water behind the waterfall, the location and stuff. I'd want to keep some stuff looking really janky as like a bit of a relic to the past.
I was gonna say, like, it would be really cool if like all the water changes, but there's like little Easter eggs here and there where you see the blue carpet again. You're like, oh
yeah, I would also like that too, and I think that would make sense as well, right? Especially rivers and such. But yeah, we'll just have to see really.
To the because Ayiza, you were very carefully, very dutifully towing the line on what you say or don't say. But I'm happy to read verbatim from the blog we published. So this is already out there, so we can't get in trouble. The question is, are you going to be adding a skybox or making the ocean look more immersive? And we said, A lot of players have mentioned how their feeling of immersion might be a teeny bit affected by sailing through a black void on unmoving seas, and we agree. Work to improve our skybox and the oceans, and possibly other bodies of water along with them, is underway. These are not tied to sailing, but would certainly make it better. And we'll talk to you more about these once we're in a better place to show you what we mean. And I remember writing that now. So that is the
Okay.
answer.
Very cool. Love to hear that.
There you have it.
All right. Lemois asks, there used to be lots of events and tournaments such as Clan Cups, King of the Skill, PvP All-Stars, Wilderness Wars, and quarterly Deadman modes. Why are none of them happening anymore? Do you have any plans on bringing any of these back and reigniting the competitive side of OSRS?
It was like a frenzy, wasn't it? Like that 2016, 17, 18, there was always something happening. And that meant that the quality of these events wasn't great. I joined in June of 2017. We had the Inferno and stuff, and then quite quick, like really quick succession, we had Deadman straight after, with Summer one. Then we had the PvP Championship, and there were 3 brackets. It was 1v1, I want to say 5 versus 5, and then a 20 versus 20. And then I think a week after that, or 2 weeks after that, it was Wilderness Wars, and then straight into another Deadman. And all of these events had some kind of problem. And the fact is, we were just, and then there was King of the Skill really quickly after that too, just in that year alone. We were just putting out so many events in such quick succession that we just couldn't ensure the quality of them. Every Deadman final, there's something went wrong, and players were tuning in to see what went wrong with the bingo cards and stuff. And that had such a massive effect on team morale and also player trust in us. And in fact, we're an MMORPG who try to make a cool game. We're not like an esport org or something. So I don't think we'll ever get back to a rhythm of such like a sheer volume of events happening, but I think they'll be of much higher quality than they were. I think the future in these kind of events lies in us building the tools for players to run them ourselves and for us to support them officially in some kind of capacity. That's the only way you're going to get back to a sequence of events that kind of thick and fast. King of the Skill had tons of balancing problems. Leagues is kind of like an indirect follow-up to King of the Skill, and I think we'll agree that it's just way better. I don't imagine we'll do another King of the Skill like that. Deadman just always beset with issues and balancing problems, and we could never get it right when it comes to things like muling or trading and feeding and whatnot. It's just impossible. And in the Clan Cup stuff and the PvP Championship, yeah, I think we should do more. I'd love to be able to do more. But then something also needs to fall back on the players as well. When we have these kind of like clan events and clan competitions, people cheat and try to DDoS and I remember a PvP Championship match where one clan threw it against the other and it just made it look stupid. It undermines it. So sometimes it's quite odd to see people like demanding these events knowing full well that they're probably going to do something pretty shitty and undermine it in some way. So that's why I think my ideal way forward would be for us to develop tooling to allow players to run this stuff ourselves, and like some kind of relationship or system where they can apply for support from us to either amplify it or maybe even fund it or sponsor it in some way, which we've done recently. Yeah, I think that's kind of like my 2 cents. I don't know, like, Ayiza, do you feel differently?
No, I feel the exact same, and this is coming from someone who, absolutely adored the fact that we were doing so much stuff all the time, because it meant I had so many opportunities to like cast, and it was a great chance to meet people and just see different scenes grow and thrive. But at the same time, I would much rather us be focusing on having a healthy game as opposed to trying to make competitive gameplay work. I am now way more in favor of empowering players to do grassroots style tournaments, competitions and such, and that's something that I really want to try and explore more of. And as Sween already said, we are doing that in some degree. We had the Crusader Cup that happened just this weekend gone, for example, and there are way more opportunities out there as well. If people are interested, you just have to let us know, and well, hopefully at some point in the future we'll have an official way of people being able to apply for support for events too. But it was just too much happening at once, and we all saw what happened. You know, Deadman became a chore. It stopped being fun. It wasn't very creative anymore, and the players felt that just as much as we did. So
All Stars is one of the hardest nights ever. Like that, there are so many tech problems going on in that studio, and we overran. I think we were aiming to wrap up by 10 p.m. and we were still going at 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
oh, do you remember the All Stars one? That I think I casted for like I casted for like 10 hours or something without stopping once. I think I had a 15-20-minute break where Foe took over.
Yeah, we were rotating people who got eliminated. It's crazy.
Yeah, I remember looking back at myself on the camera. I'm like, why am I not looking at the camera like at all here? Why do I look like I'm on drugs? And it was just because I was so exhausted. It was surreal. Fun, but my God, I don't want to do that again.
Game Blast, that's the event we should bring back.
Yes, I agree. Game Blast was so fun.
Okay. Rafa D asks, do you think we'll ever see another RuneFest? Seems so many people are crying out for it.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, we had Mod Pips again on a birthday stream, kind of talk about it. Pretty, like this year, probably too soon. I mean, we're halfway through the year. The answer 3 months ago was probably too soon. Nothing's been announced. It's definitely too soon. So I'm hopeful for next year. Nothing confirmed. This isn't a confirmation. But in my time at CCP, I got to attend their fan fest, and this was early 2022, so last year. And even then, like that kind of, we were very much like post-COVID world. We caused the COVID outbreak in Reykjavik. Like our event, people coming all over the world, locked down the entire studio. People were sick. People who'd come and flown to the event from as far as America and Australia, it was held in Iceland, were suddenly stuck in Iceland, quarantining, or so. We need to now. I think enough time's probably elapsed that people know how to run events better in the current, in the way the world is now. But it needed time for that to happen. And also, I think it was a good opportunity for us to take a step back and be like, all right, what do players actually want from RuneFest? Is it everything we were running, all the little activities and mini games and stuff? Is it a keynote? Or is it just being able to meet their friends, their clan mates, meet other players, meet content creators, and meet JMods, and then hear some cool news about the games? So I think we've had the opportunity now to maybe realize what's important to the event, to RuneFest. Should we spend so much time and effort on a massive night before when we could, I don't know, do something different? I don't know what different is, but it's given us a good opportunity to really think about what it could be and should be. And because we're thinking about this is the reason I think we will see another RuneFest, yeah. We haven't suddenly said, okay, cool, good, we've got an excuse not to do it again. Far from it, we will miss it. We love working on it. We love being there.
Awesome. I've never been to one, so I really want to.
You definitely need to. Yeah, when it happens, make sure you do.
Yeah, I will 100% go. That honestly, I regret. I've heard so many stories from people on the cast and other things of just amazing times at RuneFest, and I just have never been. So, yeah, as soon as the next one is, I will 100% be going. Peter Tracy says, botting in Old School. Much love to all three of you. Why are flagrant bots dominating the high scores in plain sight? We really need answers. The health of the health of the game long term depends on what the company is doing about it. Community confidence is really eroding. Thank you, guys.
We feel it. We know confidence is eroding in us, and we know we've said in the past, don't worry, we've got it covered, just give us time. And you're running out of patience. I think in the short term, what we can do is just renew focus on looking at really like sore points of contention. So things like boss high scores, for example. But the truth is, and I said this in I think the interview you alluded to earlier, Ayiza, where I basically said resource like throwing bodies at it isn't going to solve problem. It's easier to cheat now than it ever has been, and that's mainly due to kind of like advancements in tech. So anyone at home, like a little script kiddie in the bedroom, can do insane stuff in terms of cheating. Part of that's also due to like the way the situation with game clients and stuff has unfolded and made it a lot simpler and easier and accessible for people to manipulate the game. And just as better tech made it easier to cheat, the answer for us fixing this stuff is in better tech. And we are working on longer term initiatives. I said again, and I hate that it's kind of becoming my line, which is like, there's a reason I came back. It's because I believe in what we're doing. And it is true. We are working on longer term resolutions to things like botting. But we're not ready to really talk about it just now. So in the meantime, we can look at resource. It won't fix the problem long term, but it can help alleviate things in the short term. We can look at where we're putting their resource in the short term, but the long term solutions lie in tech and tooling for our anti-cheating team, which is where we're working. So we won't see that effect like instantly. I don't think we'll see it soon, but this is where the resource and reallocation and stuff can come in. But long term, I really do believe that we're going to, I don't know, botting and cheating affects every MMO. If you look at any MMO sub, they will be talking about botting in one form or another. I think maybe we'll be in a position to handle it better than other MMOs. That's my optimistic goal. I think we'll be in maybe. I'd like to think when you're thinking about anti-cheating teams in MMOs, that we'll be one of the most like well-equipped to deal with it eventually once we've delivered these long-term things I'm mentioning. So that's where my optimism is. So I'd like players to kind of get on board with that, but I understand why they wouldn't, because they can only see and handle what they've got in front of them right now.
Okay. Ayiza, any other thoughts?
I think Sween said it best there, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah, I know you guys are not the anti-cheat team. I just want to mention one thing that I've been talking about in my previous rambles and some casts prior is the report button. I feel like the confidence in the report button is at an all-time low. I don't think it's ever been that high, but it really feels like nothing happens when players report people. It probably does something, but one of the things I was thinking, and again, this is not on you guys at all, but this is just an idea, is to get an automated response from Jagex saying a person you reported got banned or not. I think that would do an absolute huge world of help for players engaging with the report button. Because right now, like, so many people say, yeah, I never even touched that button because it just feels completely pointless. Feels like it doesn't do anything, and nobody reports anybody anymore. And I'm losing faith in it too. Like I only report about half the people I see now because it's like this is just a waste of time on my end, it feels like. So one of the just things I was thinking, I don't even know if it's possible in your guys' end, but is like a response saying if somebody you reported actually got banned or not. It would just be like, okay, this is reinforcing. This is going to allow me to report more players in the future that are clearly cheating. So
yeah, that's definitely a fair point, fair idea. I don't think it's currently something that's possible with our system, but we are looking to make a huge amount of improvements across the board because, as Sween just mentioned, then we are feeling it ourselves too. But it takes time, and nothing's easy when it comes to old school. But to kind of like comment on the point about losing faith in the report button and players not using it, well, that's one of the biggest ways to ensure that it doesn't do anything is by not using it, right? So the more people that are reporting, we definitely use that information, and that is valuable to us. So you might not get a response from it, but it does help us, even if it might not seem immediately obvious that it does. But I would say if you do see someone, I would definitely be out there reporting them still.
Okay. Cool. That's good to hear that it works, at least. Something's happening. And I understand, with like botting, you can't just ban every individual. There has to be a lot of, I don't know. I don't know how it works back there, but I see like huge clearances of just like huge bot farm was just eroded, because of information, probably from reports and other things. So cool. Yeah, it's tough. And just one last thing is it really does suck, when you see just blatant bots that are just way high on the high scores, and it's just like, what is going on here? So, but you guys understand, and yeah.
I know.
Okay.
Definitely know on that part.
All right. Chris Scholes says dual arena removal. In hindsight, regret or no regrets? Is death matching worse?
I don't regret it. Oh, sorry, go on, Sween. You can go ahead.
I'll say what I was going to say, and then I'll let you finish, and I'll come back to it. I don't regret it either. No regrets.
Cool. Yeah, no regrets whatsoever. I think that deathmatching is a problem in its own right, and that is something that we are looking into. And I hope that we can get to a point in the future where we're able to correctly identify and take action against people who are deathmatching, because a lot of it is not legitimate play, and it is fueling things that the dual arena would have previously, which is why we eradicated it. But I think when you look at the two, it is vastly different. The scale of people involved in deathmatching versus those that were involved in the dual arena it's not even comparable. So yes, there is another evil out there that exists still, but if I was given the option to take back time and bring the dual arena back, I would not take that option.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. I think I don't know the numbers, but there's definitely got to be way, way, way fewer people staking nowadays, which is nice.
It's night and day. When we were talking about removing the dual arena, we knew, because of the way our trade system works and the way PvP mechanics work, that players would try and deathmatch. It's just how the game works in terms of like the ability to do so is there. Unless we changed how we trade and how we PvP, and we've done that before, it didn't go down too well, did it? I don't know. We can't stop that from happening. We can punish it, which I think is what Ayiza is alluding to, but you can't stop it. So it's almost like we knew that would happen in a really like unofficial capacity. And if we compare the dual arena being very accessible, very obvious, very visible, very easy to get into, versus this kind of like death matching scene where it's it's a bit more inaccessible, it's harder to find, you have to go looking for it. One is more one of those is preferable to the other. I'm glad the dual arena's gone. I don't want to go into like personal opinions and beliefs and stuff, but I don't like gambling really, and the dual arena was very, very close to that. I'm glad we've managed to remove that for sure.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with that. It's like it's going to be impossible to remove people's willingness to gamble. Like you just can't get rid of that. But yeah, I think getting rid of the dual arena, which was like a game, it almost felt like game sponsored. Like this is where you can go. Like this is endorsed by the game, kind of to go here. Now, of course, nobody at Jagex was endorsing it, but it was in the game, and in fact, it just made it really easy to, just lose. And it just inevitably would make people have negative thoughts towards the game, because when you get addicted to gambling and it's in your game, it's like you lose interest in the game. There's a lot of other problems that come along with it.
Yeah, and because it's I think gambling has a place. I like the occasional bet on like a big horse race or a big sport event or a big football match, but it's a low stakes for fun type thing, and that is only ever like a proper official gambling source, and there are warnings and there's help you can get. When the fun stop is the big campaign in the UK, so you've got that kind of like alert, you've got these kind of checks in place to make sure you don't bet too much money, and you've got help. They point you to places to get help.
Yep.
Whereas you see like unofficial places, and now I'm talking more about like streaming environments too. Like live streaming is now. I don't want to get on a tangent, but I hate how prevalent gambling is. Not on RuneScape, but everywhere on live streaming platforms rather. And you've got content creators playing with so much money, like it's not even real, and there's no warning. There's no way to get help. They're not telling you to be careful. They're just pretending it's not real money. And then you've got viewers who are not set up financially to do that, following they're following suit rather. And they don't know to stop when they need to stop. And they don't know where to get help. But I'm going on a rant now about something completely different. So, yeah, I guess that's more of my personal opinion as to why I think the removal of the dual arena is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Even if it is a tangent, it appears to be growing too, which is not great.
Scary. Like continuing it, there was a big expose in one of the UK papers about how the gambling lobby has really gotten deep into the pockets of these kind of UK cabinet and stuff. So advertising is everywhere now. You can't move for it. It's all over. Sports and esports is all over it, and it's worrying for me.
Yeah, it's sad. I'm in agreement too. I hate to see it. I personally don't gamble. The furthest I go in terms of gambling is the lottery, and that is literally it. Because I just, I just, fair enough if you believe in it and you think that it's okay, then that's cool. Everyone's able to have their own kind of views and opinions on things, but it's not for me. Bringing it back to game side of things, I do have one reservation with the removal of the dual arena, and that is the state that the PvP arena turned into. I'm really sad about that.
We can talk about that.
Yeah, it's a sad situation to see the PvP arena how it is now, because the tech behind it was phenomenal. Mod Ash did a really great job of implementing that, and as a system, I think it's brilliant. Yes, it needs some improvements, and it could be updated, but the biggest thing for me was the lack of rewards going into the game, and it just not having that appeal. I think it's really slept on. The PvP arena, I think, offers a great opportunity for creators to set up their own tournaments. And I had these great visions that players would, jump in and create tournaments between their communities and include it as part of their bingo events, or just have a clan thing on a weekend, and we could look to support them financially with prize pools and stuff. But it just hasn't developed, and I'd really like to be able to spend time on that at some point in the future. But we just have so much going on right now that it's not a priority. But if there's one thing I could go back and change, it would be that.
Yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate, because it really does seem like there was a huge system overhaul in order to make that all happen, and it's just a barren wasteland besides the two bots that fight at the entrance.
It's just crazy to think about what's actually possible. You think about it as, I know it's not a huge advancement for more modern games now, but for old school RuneScape, where you can literally queue from anywhere, well, from any world, and even in fact from anywhere, using the mini game section, and then be transported to another world, through a few clicks of a button, and then be matched up with someone and then fight them, and that all to just kind of work is phenomenal for old school. And it just had so much potential. It's just a shame, really. But ultimately, I guess in some way, we are to blame, because we could have spent way more time on, pushing out those rewards. But the focus, at priority's sake, was to replace the dual arena with actual engaging game content. And that's what we achieved. And I'm very happy for the fact that we did that. I just would like to see that have more love than it does.
Yeah. It was just a huge place right there, but it just doesn't seem to get any love. So, yeah, unfortunate. Okay, let's see. I think, honestly, I think the biggest thing is, like you said, probably rewards. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's much incentive to go there in the first place, besides just, have some fun with clan events and stuff. But
yeah, it's also really difficult now because we have Bounty Hunter, which I think serves as that place for where a lot of people would have used the PvP arena to learn PvP. Bounty Hunter is now out, and that has a whole host of amazing rewards, and players have been absolutely loving that content, which has been fantastic to see. So it is a bit of a difficult one. Maybe we can look at the PvP arena being the training ground for no honor fights as opposed to honor fights in the distant future, let's say, when more people are interested in PvP after trying out Bounty Hunter and want something new and take it to that next level. And maybe we can explore it again then if appetite grows.
Okay. Going back, unless Sween had anything to say.
No, nothing bad, mate.
Going back to Dayton's questions, he had two others, and one of them is, what is your favorite thing about working for Jagex?
Okay. My favorite thing about working for Jagex is very specific to my. I mean, there's a lot of favorite things. I covered them earlier. You know why I came back. That kind of like forms part of it. The team, the way that we treated. But in terms of working there, outside of all of that, is very specific to my role, and that is being able to influence the game based on what the players want, and knowing that yes, sometimes we might make people unhappy with decisions that have been made, but I think for the most part is being able to finish at the end of the day, no matter how hard it has been, and being able to say someone's experience has been made better because of the work that we've done. There's just something about that feeling that I don't think you can get anywhere else. And I love doing what I do as a result of that, and that's why I see myself wanting to stay in community for as long as possible.
Okay.
Plus, as well, it's cool as hell working on games, like, generally, and I've had so many amazing opportunities as a result of working here. So second to that would just be that exact thing, is just the opportunities I've had, from casting competitive tournaments to talking at events related to game development, to being able to go to the likes of TwitchCon or the Streamer Awards and all that kind of stuff. It's really, honestly, awesome. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Very cool. Sween?
Ayiza stole mine, and it was going to be like a bit of a loose ramble about my favorite thing is just working on a video game. It's so cool, and there's so many reasons why. It's just cool. Like at the base, you know, when we're going into things like Game Jam, or when we're thinking about new content, just thinking about what it could be, the potential for something, just being able to sit and think of stuff, an actual job for that day, right? It's just insane. It's so cool to be able to do that, and not just game content, but marketing ideas, or like collaborations with brands or studios or content creators or merchandise, the events I get to go to, being able to go and play football for Jagex against other game studios, like going and beating Xbox in a five-a-side football match. It's just crazy. That's my job. I'm getting paid to do that. I've worked so many crap jobs as well. Ayiza earlier said like he knows he doesn't want to do anything other than games, and I'm the same. I don't know long
That's awesome
term.
to hear.
No, it's so cool, man, to have that kind of clarity. I'm very lucky. I'm lucky I got into the industry accidentally, which I spoke about on the first time I was here. Like, it was completely accidental. I've worked since I was 14, a ton of pants jobs, like really manual stuff, and I'm glad I don't have to do that. Huge amount of respect for the people who do, but I'm glad I don't have to. I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Long term, like, I've got plans. Probably won't be at Jagex long term, but that's just like natural career progression. I will always love the studio and the game, but it's the right place for me right now. I can do good stuff for the game and the studio, and they can do good stuff for me. I love what I do. I'm so lucky. Even like this evening, just chilling out, having a beer while I talk to, you know, you two. That's cool. It's my job. It's nice.
I'm grateful you guys are so willing to come on. This is like, honestly, I've been looking forward to this all week. So yeah, I'm
glad. Thanks for having us. I really enjoy it.
It's lovely.
Yeah, really, really echo that part as well. Yeah, thank you for having us on. It's always a pleasure. It was the last time, and I'm more than willing to do this with anyone, really. I love talking about the game and what we do. So
that is one of the coolest parts about like the team at Old School, is you guys are so open with the community. Like, I don't really even play any other games, to be honest, so I don't really know the difference between, you know, talking with the team at other people, but I can't imagine it's that easy to just get a hold of a random dev or a random community member and just talk after work with them. So this is awesome.
There are some really great community teams out there. I do think for a game of our size, we probably are more visible and easy to talk to than other games of similar size. But then when you have I don't know, maybe smaller games or up and coming titles especially, that's when a lot of community teams seem to thrive because it's more manageable. You've got fewer players to look after and talk to.
Yeah.
But I think we do a really good job for being such a big game as we are.
Okay, what hobbies do you have while not at work?
Gaming for sure. I play a lot of games lately. At the moment, playing a ton of Diablo. I'll be playing Final Fantasy 16 soon when that comes out, and then I'll be getting into Old School after that. I think back into Old School a lot more, and then I've got a ton of single player games on the go as well. Which I was going to say, I've been playing a lot of Persona, and I have rumors of a remake as well. That leads me to another hobby, I guess. I'm a bit of a closet weeb. I watch a ton of anime. I like watching movies, documentaries and stuff. Big into music. And then probably finally other hobbies like sports. I play a lot of sports. I try and keep fit. I'm in the gym often. Play a lot of football. Less so now because I'm getting old and I get injured all the time. So gaming, sports, and just sitting and watching stuff. Probably hobbies.
That's cool. Yeah, the age creeping up on all of us. It's not great for our bodies. Can't run around as much as we used to.
I can't sit at my desk in the same way like I used to, let alone run around as much.
All right, what about you, Ayiza?
Yeah, I think I've got a bit of a problem, to be honest, because my hobbies just change depending on my mood. I've gone through so many different ones. But I think for at my core, right now, for example, I don't really have a huge amount of time for hobbies because I'm renovating my house. So I've been getting into DIY a lot, and I would consider that a hobby at this point. I actually really enjoy it. I like learning. For me, if I'm picking up a hobby outside of just for keeping my mind clear, I like to do things that will keep my brain nourished. I like learning. And when I'm not learning, I find it really difficult to just stay interested in something. So DIY is great for that because there's just so many things that you can do and so much to learn. Outside of DIY though, I enjoy hiking. I like running as well, albeit I haven't ran for a while now because I'm lazy and I've been gaming. I obviously would consider gaming as one of my core gaming is part of my personality. Because it has just been there for my whole life. The generation that I grew up in, I started my very early life not having access to internet or phones and spending time outdoors to really starting off as technology was on the rise, getting my first computer at 12. Well, I built my first computer at 12. I had my first PC at 9, which was shared with the family. So that's always been a core, always will be. But yeah, DIY, running, hiking. And I also really like woodworking, whether it's just making something. I really want to build a workshop once I'm done with the house so I can start making small pieces of furniture. And that kind of came from one day my mum bought me a whittling set for my birthday where you carve small blocks of wood into figurines or whatever it is that you want to make. And I really enjoyed that, really got into it. I haven't had as much time because of the house to do that. But I would definitely say that is going to become my main hobby after I've finished all of my DIY stuff. So, yeah.
Very cool.
You owe me a whittled DDS. I remembered. You said you were going to make me one.
Yeah, I did. I've got the base for it. I just need to finish it. Just like I was making my mum a little turtle, and I've still not finished that yet. But yeah, I made a dragon longsword, which I thought turned out amazing. I've tweeted about that.
It looks very cool. Okay, well, do your mum's one before mine. That's more important. Make mum happy.
You know it. I'll get there eventually. But yeah, I mean, you know how much I'm doing on the house at the moment, so it's just a bit crazy. But
Ayiza is so manly. The stuff he's doing is crazy. Puts the rest of us to shame for sure. And you reminds me of another hobby. I like learning as well. I'm a big history buff. I read a ton. I try and read like once a week, one book a week at least, whether it's fiction or non-fiction.
Very cool. And what's your favorite? So you said history is what you mainly focus on?
Yeah, I love history.
Yeah, I've been really into listening to audiobooks. I'm at the stage where I'm listening to about 2 books a month. I'm probably going to get up there and on your level of like 1 a week potentially, but I usually listen on my walks.
Solid. That's solid. Like 2 a month. It's still hitting like the 24 a year. That's a ton. That's good.
It's just cool because it naturally fell into place. I hated reading when I was a kid. I mean, I think when I was a kid, I loved reading. And then I think as soon as I entered like middle of middle school, I stopped enjoying it throughout high school. And then it just became a chore. But now I've like I don't know. I love it now.
Well, when you're a kid, you have a lot of choice on what you read. And then when you're an adult, you have a lot of choice on what you read. In middle school and high school, you don't have a choice. You read what your curriculum is. I think it's the lack of freedom. Like, cause, I don't know. It sounds really. I know this sounds stupid, but I don't even want to say it.
Say it.
Go on.
Books can be about anything, right?
Yeah.
So there's something for you, but if you don't like what your teacher likes, and that's what you take away is what you think reading is.
Yeah.
Then that's a shame.
Yeah,
That's actually a really good point. That's not a stupid thing at all.
That's not.
That was
I
very
think books can be about anything is quite a stupid thing.
You're inspiring, Sween.
No,
I
think
okay,
that's 100% true though. As soon as you're forced to read this and then write a report on it, I'm like, I hate reading now. So, but yeah, I'm absolutely like a huge fan of at least mainly listening. I read here and there, but it's mainly listening to books.
I used to love reading when I was a kid, but I came to the realization that I loved reading when I didn't have access to a computer. And then as soon as I had a computer, I would never read. So it's like my parents used to run their own garage, and would go around, whilst we were too young to be staying at home on our own. And that's when I would read. I would sit in a car that was being worked on, like at the bottom of their yard, and I would just read one book every day, and I would get through it. I remember it would always, like, my birthday, I'd always get like the new Harry Potter book, and I'd read it within the first day or 2 days, depending on how long it was.
Holy.
And so many different books that I went through. Like, I don't know if anyone that is listening to this has ever heard of a series called Deltora Quest, but my God, I loved that so much, and I would love to see that continue. But I recently bought a whole bunch of different books with the aim of getting into them, but like finding the time for it, I'm just complaining at this point and making excuses. But like by the time that I'm done working on the house or playing games like I shouldn't be, I'm just like, nah, it's time to. I tell you what the problem is now. Sween, as inspiring as he is about reading books, is also very compelling about getting you into anime. And I never really watched anime a massive amount outside of Dragon Ball, which is my favorite of all time, and like Death Note, and there's a couple of others that I've watched as well that were recommended to me whilst I was streaming. But then I didn't really touch anything apart until this year. And I think this year now I've got like 8 different anime series that I've watched, and 4 more that I'm waiting for the new episodes to come out on. And I'm scared I'm going to get at the point where I'm actually recommending animes then to Sween that he hasn't actually watched, which let me tell you is hard. He came round to mine one weekend with Archie. Mate, honestly, I'm like, oh, have you seen this one? Yeah, I've watched that one. It was okay. I'm like, what the hell? Oh, you tried this one. But Sween and Archie came round to my house one weekend. We had a little like boys sleepover. It was great. Had a fantastic time. And it was the end of the night. I was like, right, let's load up Crunchyroll and see what we can see. What should we watch? And it's like we're scrolling through. It's like, yeah, watch that. Yeah, I've watched that. Yeah, I've watched that. Yeah, I've watched. And I'm not kidding you. We did not find an anime that he has not watched that would like be relevant to something we wanted to watch. It is crazy.
Wow. Yeah, I started.
I mean, fully, but I respect the hell out of it.
You got to embrace it at this point. Yeah. No,
so good now.
We started watching Hell's Paradise. Very good. Go and watch it. It's so good.
It's so good. It is so good, and do you know what? It's one of the only animes that is modern, other than Demon Slayer, that actually has a normal name that isn't like an essay of a title. Like, I died and then got reincarnated as a squirrel, got ate by a bear, and now I'm my friend's sister. It's crazy. But you know what? I'm still watching them, so.
Yeah, man, that's my second favorite one.
Yeah, I've watched that.
Very cool. This is coming from Oily Hands. This is a little bit of an IRL topic as well. Favorite cuisine and favorite meal?
Ooh, okay. Give me a second.
All right.
While I think, Sae Bae, what's yours?
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna say cuisine, probably Thai.
Okay, nice.
Probably.
Choice.
Maybe Indian. The problem is with Indian food is like every time I get it delivered, the chicken is dry. They can't do chicken. I don't know what's happening there. Maybe it's just the places I go.
To the UK, man. You gotta come to the UK. We smash Indian food. It's like a national dish.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
absolutely love Indian food, but I think Thai is where I really it's just always great. And I think I love noodles more than like soups or rice too. So like Thai has amazing noodle dishes. Favorite meal though, I like it's too hard. It's too hard to say like what my favorite meal is. Literally anything with seafood, I think. I mean, you could always just go with pizza. I am absolutely a huge fan of pizza, but like yeah, it's hard to say favorite meal. What about you guys though?
I'm not very cultured, I'll be honest with you. So in terms of like cuisines, I wouldn't even know what food my cuisine falls under. Like I'm literally Googling right now types of cuisine and checking the food in them so that I can tell you, because I don't think I have one in that like particular sense of of a favorite cuisine. I'd probably say Japanese, just because like it includes a lot of my favorite foods within like Japanese cuisine. But then like favorite meal is difficult to say because I have a lot of different meals that I
know
really
that
like.
was really tough. Like I could choose favorite cuisine, but like meals is like there's so many that are just tied. I feel like
I'm gonna give a cheat answer.
Okay.
And it's not really a meal, but it also is, but like dim sum. So anything that involves like dumplings, small food of like Asian Orient is definitely, if there's an option for that, I will 100% always go for it. Yeah, that's probably what I would go with.
Okay. Sween?
I think favorite cuisine is probably Vietnamese. Now it's really similar to like other Asian cuisine, but they also have banh mi, which is like awesome stuff in a baguette. And I've got such fond memories of Vietnam and just eating so well like a king. I loved it. You could get so much food for so cheap. So I think that very fond memory.
What did you eat whilst you were in Thailand, Sween?
Oh,
Vietnam. What did you eat whilst you were in Vietnam?
People will hate me. Don't do that.
Oh god.
All right.
Continue.
I was being very open-minded because I'm not very judgmental like Ayiza here, and I ate some of what they ate in the region, and that means I ate dog. Okay, all right, you happy now, Ayiza? I said it. I ate some dog, and I enjoyed it, and I hate myself, but it was good.
Hey, look, I know that there's a whole load of people, like people have a huge amount of attachments to that because dogs are pets, so on and so forth, and very strong opinions around it. But like, I wasn't saying it to call. Well, I was saying it to call you out, but I'm not judging you because what if someone considered a cow to be a pet in the same way that a dog is a pet? And I've seen people with like pet pigs, but we eat bacon and sausages without ever batting an eyelid, unless you're obviously vegan or anti-meat generally, or pork. So at the end of the day, if you had to choose between life or death, and the option was to eat a dog or die, and it was accepted to eat dogs in the place that you're in, I would choose that too. Like, I would also be open-minded to it because in places like there, it's normalized. It's part of their state.
Just to be clear, the option wasn't life or death. It was,
I know.
This whole I guess topic of discussion is so confusing. I feel like it's impossible to ever get a right answer anyway. My sister and my brother-in-law are vegan, and it just feels like it's a never end. It's like a paradox. It's like a never ending thing of like what you can or can't eat, because every single thing will get affected. Even if you don't eat something that's like an animal, like something else is going to get affected. I don't know. The whole thing is just like a conundrum, I feel like.
It's very if you value, say, like ethics, like the ethics of eating an animal, or you value the environmental impact or something like that, or wanting to eat locally. There are so many different things to try and balance in your head. It's really difficult. You need to prioritize what you prioritize. I was vegan for like a year and a half, so maybe that's some way of making atonement for me eating dog once. But now I'm no longer vegan. I eat meat again.
So how
Favorite meal, dumplings. I'm gonna go for Ayiza, like dim sum, dumplings. That meal me and you shared when we were at the Stream Awards, that was so good.
Oh, that was. I always forget. Pasadena was it? We went to.
Yeah, we had a little day trip into Pasadena and had some. I think it was like a Korean dim sum, perhaps. That was so good.
It was incredible. Yeah.
Let me ask you about your choice to go vegan and then your choice to stop going vegan. What was that?
My ex wanted to cut down on eating meat, so I was like, okay, cool. I thought about that too, mainly for health reasons and environmental reasons, rather than like the ethics of eating an animal.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just went from like cutting down into just stopping entirely for quite a while. And in terms of why I started eating meat again, I think I do remember having like not health issues. I'm exaggerating a ton, but I was feeling really faint at times. And even though I was taking supplements, I was taking like B12 and like adding a lot of nutritional yeast and taking like iron supplements and stuff, it still didn't really seem to help. And this is probably like a massive placebo effect, but when I ate chicken again for like the first time in like probably a year and a half, I felt so good the next day. I felt back to myself again. I just carried on. I've cut down. I'm no longer eating anywhere near as much as I was.
Mm-hmm.
So at least that stuck with me. But yeah, I guess my motivation was just more for like support and then maybe some kind of environmental concerns, but not really massively into that.
Yeah. Interesting.
I wouldn't even say that it was placebo because I had a very similar experience. I went vegan for about 6 months with my ex as well. I basically started with Veganuary when that trend happened, and then we just continued it on. But I found it really difficult to have interesting meals that were vegan, and I know things have changed massively now, where there's a lot more options available to you. But I would agree with Sween that I never felt satisfied. I'd always feel hungry, even though my stomach was full. I would feel hungry still. Although it did take me a while to be able to eat chicken again after being vegan, even just for 6 months. I remember the first time I had some chicken thighs that I was deboning, and I nearly threw up in the process, and I had to just throw them away. Like I couldn't handle raw meat because it just felt weird.
It wasn't cooked yet. You were just preparing it.
Yeah, I was preparing it, and it was freaking me out. So yeah, I don't have that issue anymore, and I still eat meat now. But since being vegan for that short stint, I've been more I would say conscious of meat intake. So when I do my shop, I'll make sure that every week I have 2 meals that just don't involve meat at all. And I've explored new recipes and actually found things that are really tasty and do fill me up. And I think that was part of my mistake before, was just going with the standard kind of like beans or, mostly beans. I don't like corn. Corn, like as a substitute, just texture was horrible for me. It used to make me feel sick. So, yeah. I don't know, more mindful now, but I had similar reasons for Sween, and where I was leading with this was like, yeah, I used to never feel full, and then when I started eating meat again, I was like, my God, I've got so much energy.
Yeah, it's tough to beat the nutrient denseness of meat. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely possible though. So it is very much an excuse. Like, and I will admit I'm lazy, and I think if I had way more energy and effort put into it, then I would be able to have a very sustained and healthy life. But as a non-meat eater, but the reality is I like eating meat. I like the taste of it, and there's so many options that are available. I found it really hard because this was like back 3 years ago now, I think it was, maybe even 4 years ago. And the options just weren't really as available as they are now. I think if I was to do it now, it'd be very different. But supermarkets didn't really have much, so it was hard to try and find things that were fully vegan. It was much easier to be a vegetarian than it was vegan. A few years back. So I'd be interested to try it again. Actually, maybe I'll do that. I'll challenge myself to see how different it is now.
Yeah, I think it's cool that you guys even tried. I've never tried to go vegan. Even though I've literally, it's weird because the older I get, I do start considering the questions of ethics with animals and stuff like that. But I'm just so late. Like it's just like I try to just block it out of my mind. Actually,
that's exactly what I do because I hate it when I think about it, so I just don't think about it. And I know that's really ignorant of me, but
this is another problem. And this is what I talk to with my my brother-in-law and my sister is like, you will never be able to be a totally perfect person. I mean, if you're gonna support this cause, why not support these other 100 causes? Like you can't support every single thing in a lifetime. You know what I mean? Like there's very, very valuable causes to push for and to, help and put your time into and do other things. But, to judge somebody, because one of the most toxic things is, vegans just hating on people that know better but don't do it, because you can literally use that same argument for any very good cause that people aren't helping support, where they could support it, but they're not. And so it's just this endless thing of like, you have to decide, what you think is a good ethical life and support the causes that you are most, passionate in, because it's impossible to support every single cause that you think is, good. So yeah, that's my little 2 cents.
I agree completely, mate. You're spot on. The way the world is set up, like no matter what you buy from whoever you buy it from, you're probably contributing towards something horrible. You've got a limit on how much you can support stuff. There's only so much time in the day for you to do things, and there's only so much money you have to be able to, donate to good causes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So think about what you can do and what makes you feel fulfilled. And that's it. You can't individually. We can't fix the world.
Yep.
I don't want to sound like defeatist, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be like more stoic, I suppose, which is you can't fix the world, so focus on what you can fix and what you can do.
Yeah, I think that's important. Okay. I want to ask you, this is not on the Twitter topics, but I want to ask you guys, what are your thoughts on Ruinous Powers, the new prayer book that's potentially coming out?
Oh, I was dreading this question.
I have to ask it because I want to hear your guys' thoughts on it.
I'm conscious of how honest I want to be on my answer to this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you my personal opinion, which is very much a personal opinion and not reflective of how the rest of the team feel. But I would be more comfortable with Ruinous Prayers not coming into the game just yet. I feel like they are probably even more impactful than adding a new skill to the game actually is, because it entirely redefines the PVM meta throughout the entire game, from early game, mid game to late game. And I have faith in the team, and I'm fully supportive, and I believe that they're doing the right thing with it and that we'll get it right. I'm just scared, I think, is the most honest answer. The Ruinous Powers scare me. I'm excited for them and the potential that they'll bring. I love the fact that it opens up new metas, new options, new builds, new playstyles. But it also, kind of terrifies me a little bit as community manager, knowing that there's going to be so much change with just one update. And managing that will be an interesting challenge. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to them going into another beta very soon, though, and seeing what players feel of them after they've been changed. But I would, I think if I had it my way, I would rather look at approaching the prayers in a similar way as we've approached adding a new skill and have a much longer period of consultation than what we've given them. That being said, like I say, I have full confidence in the team, full faith in the way that they're approaching it. I think that it's going along the right routes. It's more of a if you could have perfect world, but perfect world doesn't exist. So that's what I would say about them. Don't know if that's the answer that you were looking for, but I'll happily expand if you want to know more about what you were looking for if it wasn't.
Well, here, let me ask Sween first. Does he have any thoughts?
I'm not sure how I think about them or feel about them, to be perfectly honest. It's interesting with a new prayer book because I think just like with, say, a new skill book, not skill book, a new spell book, sorry. Like just like with a new spell book or even with a new skill, you want something new. You want that new prayer book to do something that you can't do anyway. Problem is, I don't think there are many things you can't do already, or what. So I don't know how to convey what I want to say, but what were people expecting from a new prayer book? I think they were expecting new stuff, like new things, new mechanics, which isn't really the case. We tried to do that, but in reality, that prayer book was always going to be rebalancing stuff that already exists. Like, there's going to be a benefit to you in combat at a cost because we need to balance it alongside the original prayer book. So I think it was always going to end up this way, kinda. The only way you'd avoid it would be, like Ayiza said, more consultation. But if people were expecting something, really crazy and brand new that I haven't seen before, was it ever going to be that way? Is there? I don't know. I can't think of do you know what I'm trying to say? Like if you fix for a new spell or a new prayer, something that's brand new, like stealing a mechanic from another game or something. But what is there to do?
Yeah, it's tough. I'm gonna lean with Ayiza and saying I'm scared of it. This is a personal take. I think part of it is just the nostalgia I have toward the standard prayer book. I think logging in and seeing the default prayers there and knowing how simplistic it is. I mean, they're very iconic prayers. And I believe part of it is just the nostalgia I have attached to my mind. Because when I see the new prayer book, I get scared instantaneously just by looking at it. Also, I feel like prayers would absolutely need to be able to be rearranged if it did come into the game. But I don't know. I think I'm just scared of it because I think there's going to be just a huge, huge effect, like you said, Ayiza, over the entire PVM section of this game. And it's going to make content feel like you have to relearn everything. And not everybody is willing to do that. Endgame, super, super endgame people that are just looking for some new life into the game are very excited for it. But I feel like for the average player, having to just, I don't know, min-max every single thing, and you're trolling if you're using the standard prayer book and things like that is just going to be a little bit like, I don't know, it's going to be rough. My idea was just add 4 new prayers from the 4 new bosses, but again, it's not like that's been pulled or anything, or even probably suggested, but I think we still have time to add to the traditional prayer book, especially because the prayers only go up to level 77 currently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's...
I see that.
I quite like that. That's cool.
Me too. I think you touched on like the casual players not really wanting to min max, but I'll be completely honest with you. I think the casual players have actually made the implementation of a prayer book infinitely harder than like high level players have, because Sween mentioned people want something new, but what is it that's something new? And I think a lot of what I've seen from feedback when we first proposed the Ruinous Powers prayer book, was that they weren't strong enough. They needed to be stronger. They didn't sound exciting. Players wanted something to sound new, to sound exciting, but no one really knew what that actually meant or what that was, because as Sween mentioned, there isn't really that much that we can do other than tweak what already exists and make it work slightly different to how it does that you're used to. But that narrative took over entirely until people actually experienced the prayers in game, because we wrote a massive blog that gave all the details, and when we did that, players just read them on face value and went, well, these just sound crap. They sound boring, they're underwhelming, they're not strong. But in reality, they were giving more DPS increases from those prayers than any item we've ever added to the game. And there were multiple of them for different attack styles. So it was kind of crazy to see that happen. And there was a definite learning point for us at that as well, that, you know, something as big as like a prayer book, you can't reasonably expect people to understand it fully just by reading a blog. And we need to do things differently in the future when it comes to explaining them to help avoid that issue happening. But I think that's what scares me the most that's why I'm scared, sorry, is because of the impact they'll have, and the impact that they could have going forward based off the players' perceptions of them, either not being strong enough because they don't understand enough about how combat works or DPS scaling and such, or them just being so underwhelming that we then have to make them so strong to be appealing that we just break something drastically. But as I said, I'm confident with the team, so fingers crossed. Players are happy with the recent changes that we're going to be making, and they'll get to try them out soon anyway, so we'll see. Maybe I won't be so scared.
Yeah, that's my hope. I'm trying to be as open-minded as humanly possible. It's just my instincts are just no. But again, I'm trying, because there's been great updates that have come out that I have said no to, and now I enjoy them. So
I remember listening to many a ramble where that's happened too.
Yep.
But I hope, if nothing else, this kind of like really just helps the listeners of this podcast today to really understand that, you know, people working on Old School are humans. You know, we all have our different opinions and views on things, but none of us let our personal opinions or views on what should or shouldn't happen impact the game, right? This isn't meant to be as a flex, but I probably could, to some degree, push really hard and abuse power to be like, put a stop to these prayers completely, because I don't really not like them. I actually love them. I think they're exciting. I'm just scared. But, you know, like I could, if I really want to, I could try and do that, but I'm not, because that would be wrong. It's not the right thing to do. And it's okay for us to have an opinion and not like something, but still add it to the game because other people do. And there's a lot of times where that happens. But more often than not, it will be the opposite, where players will believe that we're doing things because that's what we really want ourselves. Like, I get the term of being the PvP J mod. That was my tag for so many years because I was really supportive of the PvP player base. I don't even PvP. I really like it. I like watching it and get involved in it, but I'm not super knowledgeable. I just wanted to see that community thrive, just like I would like to see the PVM, skilling, questing, and role-playing and all these other areas thrive too. So yeah, if nothing else, maybe it will open up people's eyes a little bit to knowing that we all have our different opinions, but we just want to do what's best for the players at the end of the day. And if that's the new prayer book, then I'll happily look to support it and give the team all the resources they need to do so.
awesome. Okay, question about collection log. So collection logs obviously completely swayed a large portion of the player base into going for log slots as like a new kind of like progression of their character in game. Instead of going for XP or pets, it's now like, ooh, collection logging. So one question is, will we ever get a high scores for collection log?
I hope not.
Why do you say that?
No, I'm joking. I wouldn't mind it. The more serious answer to like I hope not is that I just get really worried when things like that are proposed around what it could do to changing the way that it's done. You know, like people have comments now that like we cater to Ironmen. We've talked about it earlier in the cast, and whenever that happens, it's like, oh, you've made Ironman easier. I just have a very strong belief that as soon as we officialize something, it draws more attention towards the I don't, faults is the wrong word, but it's just an easy way to describe. But like the faults in like obtaining something or achieving something or getting to that point. And I think that officializing collection log in a high scores would be great for the people that are, you know, doing it because they really want to and they're fine with that grind. But I do think that it would then cause extra kind of like conversation around, well, now that it's on the high scores, this isn't really a feasible goal to go for. So can we just do this, or can we remove that from the high scores so it's not included, or can we make this a bit less of a grind, for example? And I think that the collection log at its current form is pure, right? It's a personal achievement that you can go for, and you can share it if you choose to do so. but you're doing it because you want to do it, not because you're trying to get a spot on a high score for it. And with how competitive Old School already is by nature, through like boss high scores, the front page, all that kind of jazz, I don't know. I kind of like how it is just this thing that you do because you want to do it, not because you feel like you have to. And it's a choice that you make. It's similar to why I have reservations over things like a Completionist cape that I think actually the Game Jam idea of that was announced or shared recently was actually a really good implementation of it. But I still have the similar reservations for something like Completionist cape that it would ultimately lead to changes over time to accommodate the fact that it's official.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to bring that up about the Completionist cape. Sween, do you have any thoughts on this before I jump in?
No, nothing to add, mate. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to, well, first off, I would really love to see a collection log high scores, but just the number. Just the number of collection logs, just something so simple.
I like that.
And you wouldn't even be able to see people's logs, or like by clicking on them and just having this huge thing. No, it would just be like whatever the number is and then what your rank is for. I think that could be cool. Plus, you can make it so it's still sort of hidden in a way where like your number isn't really based on how progressed you actually are, because you can kind of do like the sleeper way of just like holding on to your easy collection logs and just rising the ranks and then just unleashing them at a later point. But that's for me. I just think that would be cool. Plus, there already is like a third-party thing, which is just really fun to see people's things. So it's like it's not necessary to add it to the official high scores.
I definitely get why people would want it though, and I would be again similar to what I said before about opinions not dictating what does and doesn't happen. I'd be happy to explore a way that we could implement it for those that enjoy that competitive aspect, because it exists, and I think it would be really cool to see as well just how much people have actually completed that might not be as prominent on social media as others that are hunting the collection log slots. So it's always great to celebrate people's achievements too. It's just I have those concerns. So
I agree with that, and that goes along with the Completionist cape. Like I get nervous of Completionist capes. I will be honest though. Well, the biggest thing with Completionist cape is like what is considered completion, and the worst thing. Kieran has the greatest ideas of all time, but one thing he brought up that sticks in my mind is like the completion cape where you only have to do like 70% or 80%. I was just like, that just isn't going to work. I know he just brought that up on one of the Q&As, but Completionist cape sounds like endless chores that inevitably will be made easier because you're going to have to upkeep those chores for the rest of your time. As soon as you get the cape, it's like every update, you're going to have to upkeep all these new chores, and people are going to get so sick of it. But
and then I think we see.
Yeah, no,
sorry,
go for
but
it. No, you go for it.
Okay. I was going to say if we do release like this, easy completionist cape, which is actually achievable and attainable, and then you're going to see people doing their unofficial comp, their own like challenge, as they do now, right? They have the comp list and stuff. People will still be doing that and holding themselves to that. And then we'll be pulled in two different directions, I think. One from a player base who wants us to make things more achievable, more attainable, more accessible. And then from the people who are still sticking with, the old school, like Google Sheets and stuff they've compiled, trying to make it harder. I think we'll be pulled in two different directions. I'm not averse to it. I used to be when I first joined the team. I was quite anti-comp, but that was 6 years ago. Things have changed a lot since then.
Yeah, same. I was like very adamantly against it, and whenever anyone mentioned it, I'll just be like, "Don't talk to me." But I'm actually quite in favor of the Game Jam pitch that was worked on by Husky, Curse, and I'm gonna get
Bruno?
shot now. I'm not remembering. Yeah, Bruno, that was it. And Rye. Rye did some of the artwork for the capes, I believe. I think that could work, but I also agree with what Sween just said then in terms of how it would split. So
one thing I really loved is it's like somebody on Reddit posted this thing, and I've been talking about it as well, is the collection log, like a wieldable collection log book that upgrades every 100 collection logs. So
that's cool.
It upgrades the style of it. Maybe there's a teleport to the collection log as well, so it can teleport you to like Varrock Museum or just some random place. But yeah, just upgrade. So there's never an ending point. It's just every 100 you get to, it'll upgrade. So there's never like, I need to finish this. No, it's like, this is just showing off your progression. And the best part about it is it's not going to restrict content coming into the game. Completionist Cape would literally have people voting no to stuff because like, oh, do I want to do this? No. So I don't want it coming into the game because I'm going to need to do this for Completionist Cape. On the other hand, this version of the book would be, you actually want more content coming into the game because you want to get to that next 100 leap, you know? So I don't know. I just thought that would be a cooler idea.
Really cool. I like it for sure. And I think as well, you're right. Because there'll be players who get, close to completing it, haven't got, the treasure trail stuff and the really RNG things. They want to reach the next tier of whatever that is, or however it looks, whatever cosmetic we've added to it to make it look different than the previous tier. And then we release new content, and that comes with, I don't know, say Desert Treasure 2, all the rewards that we're going to be polling. That's a ton more opportunity. That's maybe their chance to get to the next tier without getting that crazy third age drop.
Yep, 100%. Plus, every 100 logs that do come out that you guys release, so like let's just say we get to 1,500, you guys get to design a brand new book that looks super sexy. And like nobody's going to have it yet, but at least it's there.
I like that. Just on this, I'm going to say one thing.
Yeah.
I love cosmetics. I love them so much. When they're achievable as like in-game goals, that for me is like one of the best things I think for like chase content, personally. And Old School Fashionscape,
it's good.
It is there. It is definitely there. So just gonna throw that one out there.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% on your side. I think there is never enough cosmetics. I think there can always be more cosmetics. I'm a huge fan of that. I also love the cosmetics that actually take like skill. I love the Fang Kit idea. I love the Twisted Ancestral. I don't have Twisted Ancestral yet, but I love that kind of stuff as well. And that's really what endgame players really want. They want to just flex.
Yeah, exactly, right. And it's so harmless. I think there's obviously a balance that you've got to draw between. I think there is a world where you can have too many cosmetics, especially for the same pieces of gear. And I like how Old School tries its hardest to make sure that when you have cosmetics, the original item is still recognizable. I think that's really cool thing about our game and the way that we handle them. I wouldn't want to see that change. So we definitely have to make sure there's a balance. But like whenever there's an option to add something cosmetic, I'm like, yes, let's do it, as long as it's right.
Yeah. No. I agree with that. It has to be right. I guess what I mean by like there can never be too many. I think of like clue scroll stuff. Like if there was a new clue expansion and you released another 200 random stuff you can wear on your character, I have zero problem with that. But I agree with your point of like adding attachments to things, they need to fit right. 100%. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, so I guess the last thing I'll kind of ask is what your thoughts are on the Desert Treasure 2 bosses. Can you guys leak anything? Are they going to be very difficult? What do you have anything that you can leak about like what, when those come out? Because I think people would love to hear it.
There's loads that we can leak, but like I just don't think it would be right to. I want people to experience and have that excitement when they come out on release. We had a really successful playtest with some creators. You may be able to find some of their thoughts. Obviously, they won't go into detail about them, but I was there and everyone was hyped from what I gather. They loved the content. I think the bosses are going to be like next level, like enjoyment to fight. They're different, but yeah, I would say just honestly wait for them to come out and just experience them. They are great. They all have their own identities as well. So it's not like you're fighting 4 of the same bosses, just with slight variances. They're 4 individual bosses with their own mechanics, their own kind of like everything about them is unique in that sense. So
I'm so excited.
I think it's going to be a great update. I'm really looking forward to when Desert Treasure 2 releases, honestly.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
I'm looking at two of them now, three of them now, and they look so cool.
I do.
They they look very old school, but they look like nothing you've seen in old school. Mechanics are quite unique. I'm really excited for them. Oh, there's so much more I want to say. They're so sick. I think I'm right in saying, Ayiza, there's another playtest in like 2 weeks. Is that still happening?
Yep.
Yeah, so more feedback coming. I'm excited. I think it's gonna be so good. They've done such a good job on these.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Yeah, I think maybe it is for the best that we just don't get any leaks. We just jump in and have fun. I'm looking forward to it though. Okay. Well, yeah, there's a few more little like topics that kind of blend into other things we've talked on. So I guess we'll just kind of wrap things up here. So Ayiza, Sween, thank you guys both very much for coming on today and answering the questions from the community and just being awesome. I really appreciate your guys' time tonight.
I had a great
thank
time,
you.
mate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much for having us on. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking about old school. To be honest, I was kind of expecting you to be like, okay, so there's not many more topics now, but we do have some little fun questions that have been asked that you're going to blast through. I saw a few of them on the tweet, and I was like, how the hell am I going to answer those?
Yeah,
This is
people can blame me if your question wasn't asked. It's not on the JMods part. That's on me. So you flame me if you get upset about that. That's for every cast as well. I always skip some.
Cool.
I might
So
answer a couple on Twitter.
Oh yeah, do a few replies. You know, that's a good shout actually. Maybe I'll do a few replies. I've had a few people that have messaged saying, "Did my question get asked?" And I'm like, "Nope, not yet, but it may do." So I'll reply to them.
They hate me. Well, thank you guys. And down below in the description, everybody go follow Sween and Ayiza on their Twitters. Keep up to date with what's happening on Old School and what's happening in their lives. And yeah, if you guys want to support the cast, down below in the description as well, there's a Patreon link. And don't have an exact... Well, here, I'm actually not going to leak next week's guest because it's not set in stone yet. But look forward to it. There's going to be a lot of guests this summer that we're going to be getting on and some more J mods as well, hopefully.
Ooh.
So anyway, guys.
Can I just say one more thing before we wrap?
Go for it.
Please, everyone, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Support Sae Bae in these podcasts. We really appreciate being able to come on here and talk about Old School. It's always a great time listening to all of the other guests as well. You hopefully have enjoyed it. So if you want to see more, do make sure that you subscribe. Show Sae Bae some love. And yeah, thank you again for having us.
Much love. Greatly appreciated. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will catch you in the next one. Thanks again, Ayiza and Sween.
See you, buddy.
Cheers. Bye.